Chapter 974. Kill. The shadow of Pangu stood in the sky. Although it was only a shadow, it was full of power that made people's hearts palpitate. Yi Xian frowned. Interesting. Then, let me see how powerful the Pangu silhouette you generated is, said Ji Hao while looking at Ji Hao. Yi Xian took a step forward and released a power that swept across all directions. The sky-killing halberd appeared in his hand and he slashed at the shadow of Pangu. Boom! The shadow of Pangu was so powerful that it threw a punch at Yi Xian. When the fist and the halberd collided, the power that burst out made the whole ancestral land of the Wu tribe shake violently. Buzz! The phantom image of Pangu was in extreme chaos. It was only because Yi Xian's attack was too powerful that the bodies of Hutu and the others, who were in charge of the 12 Divine Fiends formation, trembled as they continuously resisted the power that Yi Xian transmitted over. You're just SO. After the attack, Yi Xian felt that the shadow of Pangu was no match for him. This made him show a cruel look on his face. The cultivation of the 4 tribulations of the way of heaven rose to the extreme, and he directly attacked the 12 divine beings killing formation. Stop him! Hutu shouted anxiously. The holy light of the way of heaven bloomed to the extreme. The 9 ancestors of sorcerers used all their strength and poured all their cultivation into the formation. They also made the shadow of Pangu attack Yi Xian again. Bang! One punch suppressed the world and everything fell. Yi Xian's punch was so powerful that it directly shattered the shadow of Pangu and made Hutu and the others stagger back. The so-called 12 divine beings killing formation collapsed. I'll send you to hell. Yi Xian's halberd danced in the sky, and strands of energy that could annihilate all things rose from the heaven-slaying halberd, directly transforming into thousands of cold lights that shot towards Hutu and the 9 ancestral shamans like a group of stars falling from the sky. Retreat quickly. Hutu's expression changed dramatically. She unleashed a reincarnation grand magic and roared at the 9 ancestral magi anxiously. At the moment, the 12 divine beings killing formation was broken, and the 9 ancestral magi were no match for Yi Xian. Hutu could only resist Yi Xian for a moment, buying time for the 9 ancestral magi to escape. Humiliation, a great humiliation. The 9 great ancestors of sorcery and a heavenly law saint were no match for Yi Xian. This was not only a disgrace to them, but also a disgrace to the entire sorcerer tribe. The 9 great ancestors of sorcery were ashamed and indignant, but there was nothing they could do because they were only sage to be and were not on the same level as Yi Xian. If they continued to advance, they would only be giving up their lives in vain. Can you stop me? Yi Xian grinned cruelly. He took a step forward and quietly appeared in front of Hutu. He slapped Hutu's head, causing her to bleed from her 7 orifices. The heavenly Tao's holy light around her crumbled inch by inch. Puff! Hutu spat out a mouthful of blood. Her entire body was dispirited, and Yi Xian's wide palm pressed down on her head, imprisoning her in the air. It was not that Hutu was not strong enough. After all, she was a heavenly law saint, but the person she was facing was too strong. She was no match for Yi Xian at all. Don't forget that Yi Xian could crush Nuwa when he was in the 3 tribulations of the heavenly law. Now he was in the 4 tribulations of the heavenly law, and Hutu's cultivation was inferior to Nuwa's. Naturally, she was defeated by Yi Xian. Creak. Yi Xian's face was cruel. He tightened his 5 fingers and exerted a terrifying force on Hutu's head. Her skull creaked and she cried out in pain. Let her go. Such a scene made the 9 ancestors of sorcerers tremble, but they still roared at Yi Xian angrily. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not even look at the 9 ancestors of sorcerers. He squeezed Hutu's head and smiled cruelly. Then he looked around and said, If you 2 don't come out, don't blame me for being merciless. Silence, silence, dead silence. The 9 ancestors of sorcerers watched angrily. They clenched their fists so hard that they made cracking sounds. The eyes of the sorcerer tribe in the 12 ancestral sorcerer mountains turned red and tears of humiliation appeared in their eyes. The sorcerer tribe knew that Yi Xian was very powerful, so powerful that they could not afford to offend him. However, they did not expect Yi Xian to be so powerful that even a heavenly law saint was suppressed by him. Dijiang, Candle Dragon, if you really come back, show yourselves quickly. As long as we condense the real Panga body, we can definitely kill Yi Xian. Gong Gong roared furiously. The rest of the ancestors of sorcerers were also extremely angry. They hoped that Dijiang and Candle Dragon could show up. Unfortunately, no matter how Gong Gong roared, Dijiang and Candle Dragon did not show up at all. Even if Hudu was in trouble, there was no reaction in this world. Yi Xian, Dijiang and Candle Dragon are really not here. It's useless even if you kill me. Hudu tried to persuade Yi Xian in a sorry state. There was great panic in her eyes. At this moment, Yi Xian's eyes were gloomy and his entire body was filled with a terrifying aura. However, there was a trace of doubt in his eyes. Was he wrong? Dijiang and Candle Dragon really did not come back? Impossible. Yi Xian suddenly denied this idea. After 1,400 years of summoning, the rest of the ancestors of sorcerers had already returned. How could Dijiang and Candle Dragon be an exception? Since you two don't care about brotherhood, don't blame me for being merciless. Yi Xian smiled cruelly at Hudu. No. Feeling Yi Xian's cold eyes, Hudu screamed in panic and tried to break free from Yi Xian's restraint. However, at this moment, Yi Xian's 5 fingers suddenly burst out with a destructive power. Hutu exploded into a cloud of blood mist. She was crushed by Yi Xian's hand. Damn it. The 9 ancestors of sorcerers roared in anger. They had witnessed Huda being killed by Yi Xian, but they could not stop the tragedy from happening. Boom. The holy power of the way of heaven and the holy light rumbled. A spot of golden light was born in the void. With the support of the way of heaven, Hutu's body was condensing. She was a saint of the way of heaven, so she could naturally come back to life. But when Hutu appeared again, the 9 ancestors of sorcerers were overjoyed. Hutu quickly kept a safe distance from Yi Xian and became gloomy and silent. Yi Xian was not surprised that Hutu came back to life. After all, it took him a long time to defeat Nuwa and make her a saint. At this moment he attacked Hutu in a hurry, so he could not kill her. Moreover, Yi Xian's real purpose was not to kill Hutu. He just wanted to force Dijiang and Candle Dragon to show up. I admire you two for being so patient. But I don't know if you will still avoid me if I destroy the whole sorcerer tribe. Yi Xian smiled cruelly. The entire world suddenly darkened as terrifying great techniques shot out from Yi Xian's hands. The entire ancestral land of the shaman clan was enveloped within them, and there were billions of bolts of lightning raging in the sky. It was obvious that if this great technique were to descend, the entire shaman clan would be annihilated. Hutu screamed in horror. The 9 ancestors of sorcerers turned pale. They wanted to stop Yi Xian, but they also knew that they were no match for Yi Xian at all. They were just mantises trying to stop a chariot. At this critical moment, it was a life-and-death crisis. Just as Yi Xian was about to cast the skill, a long sigh sounded between heaven and earth. Then, 2 illusory figures quietly appeared in the sky. Yitiandi, why do you have to force us? Chapter 975. The world was silent, and everything was silent. 2 illusory figures were walking toward Yi Xian. The space-time of the world was slightly disordered, and mysterious ripples were rippling in the world as if they were telling the ancient and mysterious space-time power. The heavens were fearless, and the earth was not shaken. When the 2 figures appeared, Hutu and the 9 ancestors of sorcery were excited, and their eyes were trembling. There was no doubt that Hutu had the highest cultivation level among the 12 ancestors of sorcery. However, there was no doubt that Dijiang and the Candle Dragon were the core of the sorcerer tribe. One was the time ancestor of sorcery, and the other was the space ancestor of sorcery. Even a saint could not do anything to them. In the universe, the laws were rampant, and the space-time power was a power that surpassed the great Tao of heaven and earth. The 2 figures could carry the space-time power, which was unique in the 3 realms. Buzz. The void manifested, and everything was silent. When the 2 ancestors of sorcery walked over, the space-time of the world seemed to be still, and even Yi Xian's mind was stagnant for a moment. Greetings, Yi Daoyu. The Candle Dragon was dressed in black, and his black hair cascaded down his back. However, his eyes did not have any white parts. Instead, they had two black pupils. When one looked into his eyes, one would feel as if one's soul was about to sink into it. Di Jiang greets Yi Tiandi. Di Jiang was dressed in green, and his hair was as white as snow. There were no black pupils in his eyes, but only white. At this moment, he was bowing to Yi Xian with his hands folded. Good, good, good. Yi Xian laughed heartily and said good 3 times. The killing skill that he had gathered disappeared, and he looked at the two ancestors of sorcery with satisfaction. Quickly gather the real body of Pangu and kill him. Suddenly, Gong Gong roared as he looked at Yi Xian with killing intent. It was obvious that the appearance of the candle dragon and Di Jiang could completely condense Pangu's true body, so they could naturally kill Yi Xian here. Yi Tiandi is a guest of our shaman tribe. How can we fight against him? Di Jiang sighed softly. Yi Daoyu, since you're only looking for the two of us, why do you have to involve my clan? Why don't we go somewhere else? Zhu Jiuyin said in a deep voice. All right. The person Yi Xian was looking for had already appeared. There was no need for him to hold onto the sorcerer tribe, so he immediately agreed. Sush. Di Jiang and Candle Jiuyin looked at each other and then nodded. Their flowers turned into 2 streams of light and flew away. Yi Xian did not even look at Hutu and the 9 ancestors of sorcery. He just followed them and disappeared. As the 3 of them left, Hutu felt relieved. No matter what, she had finally sent Yi Xian away, and the shaman tribe could avoid this calamity. Hutu. Suddenly, a deep voice rang out, causing Hutu's expression to change drastically. Not only Hutu, but the 9 grand shamans were also startled, and they all looked towards the source of the voice. Candle Jiuyin? Hutu said in shock, because the Candle Jiuyin had appeared in front of them again. However, his body was illusory, and he gave off an extremely fleeting feeling. This is the time backtracking technique. I don't have much time left. Let me finish, the Candle Jiuyin said anxiously. Yi Xian is the calamity of the sorcerer tribe. He forced me and Yi Xian to harm us. Now that we've lured him away, quickly lead the sorcerer tribe to hide in the small world that Di Jiang and I created. As long as Yi Xian doesn't die, the sorcerer tribe can't come out. After the Candle Jiuyin finished speaking, he threw a black jade token at Hutu. This jade token is the key to open the small world. Although you're a heavenly saint, Yi Xian already has the ability to kill a saint. You must protect the people of my clan, and don't be enemies with Yi Xian from now on, the Candle Jiuyin said quickly. Then what about you and Di Jiang? Hutu's face was ghastly pale. She had already sensed the seriousness of the matter. Don't worry. Although we're only sage to be, Di Jiang has the space divine power, and I have the time divine power. Yi Xian definitely can't catch us. When we get rid of him, we'll naturally find you, the Candle Jiuyin said in a deep voice. Why? Why did you lure him away? If we condensed the real body of Pangu just now, Yi Xian would definitely not be a match for us, Zhu Rong said in surprise. Shut up. Suddenly, Hutu scolded coldly. It takes some time to condense the real body of Pangu. How can Yi Xian let us do as we please? I'm afraid that before we condense the real body of Pangu, Yi Xian will definitely kill us. Quickly take your people and leave, the Candle Jiuyin said quickly. The Candle Dragon quickly spoke, and his entire body started to dissipate as if he was going to disappear at any moment. However, this abhijna that could turn back time was simply too shocking. Rumble. The gate to the small world was opening. Hutu knew that they could not delay any longer. If they waited until Yi Xian came back, the Wu tribe would definitely be annihilated. When the 12 ancestral Magus Mountains entered the small world, a large number of Wu tribe members poured in. Hutu took one last look at the 3 realms. Although there was deep unwillingness in her eyes, she knew that she had to hide with the Wu tribe in order to avoid the annihilation brought by Yi Xian. Looking at the Candle Jiuyin who was about to disappear, Hutu said with a heavy expression, You too take care. You must come back alive. If Di Jiang and I die, the Wu tribe will never be born again. The Candle Jiuyin's body completely collapsed. His voice rang in the ears of the entire Wu tribe. Buzz. The gate to the small world was closing. The entire Wu tribe disappeared from the 3 realms. This was something that Yi Xian did not expect. Yi Xian was indeed good at calculation, but he knew nothing about the way of time and space. This allowed the Wu tribe to escape by luck. The sky was heavy and the world was vast. The candle Jiuyin and Dijiang strolled through the sky. Yi Xian followed behind them. He was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, he locked onto their qi to prevent them from escaping his control. Suddenly, the candle Jiuyin's body trembled. He nodded at Dijiang vaguely. His lips even moved slightly at this moment. Clearly, he was transmitting a message to Dijiang. Dijiang nodded slowly. He knew that the Wu tribe had already hidden in the small world that they had created. Time stop. Suddenly, the candle Jiuyin roared. The power of time rippled, and strands of silver light surrounded him. In an instant, it covered 1,000,000 miles of heaven and earth. Space freeze. At the same time, Dijiang roared. A terrifying white light flickered on the surface of his body. Then, it exploded with a loud bang, completely sealing off the space in the area. How dare you? Yi Xian roared coldly. He did not expect the two of them to dare to play tricks with him. This also made him attack violently. He directly restrained the two ancestral magi. Buzz. The world froze and the space froze. Yi Xian's lightning-like body suddenly stopped. He seemed to have sunk into a swamp. An extremely terrifying and sticky mysterious power supported him, causing him to move as slowly as a snail. Chapter 976. The heavens and earth were silent. The heavens and earth within a radius of 1,000,000 miles fell into a state of stillness. That was the manifestation of the power of spacetime. It had truly frozen the world. Even the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was stagnant. The so-called law of heaven and earth was also dormant. The power of spacetime? Yi Xian's eyes shone with a terrifying divine light. He was completely suppressed by the power of spacetime, but his face was filled with excitement. This is the power that I want. This is the power that I want. Yi Xian said excitedly. He could not control himself. That also proved how excited he was. To be able to make Yi Xian unable to control his excitement, that also proved how shocked Yi Xian was. The heavens and earth were silent. Spacetime was still. Dijiang and the candle dragon were expressionless. They looked at Yi Xian indifferently. Yi Xian, although the two of us are no match for you, it's wishful thinking for you to kill the two of us, Dijiang said in a low voice. Actually, I sensed it 10,000 years ago. I even predicted what would happen in the future. I saw that you, Yi Xian, wanted to kill Dijiang and me. Although I don't know the reason, we were already prepared. How could we let you succeed? The candle dragon said coldly. The candle dragon was the ancestral sorcerer of time. He could predict the past. That was a manifestation of the power of time. Naturally, he could sense the danger that Yi Xian brought. At that moment, Yi Xian had completely calmed down. He stared at the two ancestral sorcerers gloomily, and a strange smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. It seems that the two of you already knew that I went to the sorcerer tribe? Yi Xian murmured. Dijiang roared angrily. Time and space of the universe, and we can see through all things. In the three realms, only the two of us possess the power of time and space. Even saints are nothing to us. However, you, Yi Xian, have persecuted the shaman tribe time and time again. Although we possess the power of time and space, we don't have the cultivation to kill you. Yi Xian, I don't care what purpose you have for the two of us. You're currently trapped in this space-time formation. It'll take you 100 years to break out of the formation. However, you'll never be able to find Dijiang and me when you break out of the formation, the candle dragon sneered. Aren't you afraid that I'll exterminate the witch tribe? Yi Xian frowned. Ah! The candle dragon laughed hysterically as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. It's a pity that Dijiang and I possess the power of time and space, but we're only sage to be cultivators. However, you're a brute who has achieved Tao in another way and even surpassed the heavenly path saint. The candle dragon said hatefully, since you know that I'm the ancestral sorcerer of time, you should know that I'm proficient in the way of time. After the two of us lured you away from the witch tribe, I've already used time backtracking to hide my people. It's impossible for you to find them even if you want to. Despicable man. Di Jiang scolded angrily. If you didn't threaten us with the witch tribe, how could you meet us? Unfortunately, you don't even have your last bargaining chip now. You're just a joke now. Hearing the two ancestral sorcerers' words, Yi Xian's face turned gloomy. He believed that the two of them were telling the truth. The witch tribe should have already hidden themselves. This was something that he did not expect. It was not that Yi Xian did not take this into consideration. He could only blame himself for not knowing the way of time and space. Otherwise, he would not have been so careless. However, Yi Xian was not disappointed because at this moment, Di Jiang and the Candle Dragon were right in front of him. As long as he could suppress the two of them, nothing would matter. Suddenly, Di Jiang and the Candle Dragon made a gesture with their hands. The time power and space power erupted and turned into terrifying saber lights that slashed towards Yi Xian. The sea turned to dust and time was like a saber. When the two ancestral sorcerers unleashed their divine powers, even a sage would be wary. Unfortunately, they were facing Yi Xian, a terrifying existence who had the cultivation of the heavenly Tao death calamity. Cling, cling. Although the time power and space power were terrifying, they could not hurt Yi Xian at all. The grand skill that the two of them had condensed did not cause any harm to Yi Xian. Damn it. Di Jiang and the Candle Dragon looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Although their divine powers were the time power and space power, their cultivation was only at the sage-to-be level after all. This was their biggest weakness. At this moment, Yi Xian's body was shaking violently. His cultivation was rising to the extreme, causing the still heaven and earth to start flowing. Although he was not well versed in the space-time power, he walked the path of using strength to prove his Tao. As the saying went, strength can break all techniques. He could only break the space-time formation with brute force. Yi Xian, it's useless. If you want to break this formation, you'll need 100 years. Crack. Di Jiang sneered. However, before he could finish his sentence, a strange sound suddenly came from the space-time formation. The space-time power that supported heaven and earth was gradually cracking. How is this possible? The Candle Dragon roared in shock. He could not believe his eyes. This was the space-time formation that the two of them had created together. How could it start to collapse? Not good, we've underestimated him too much. This Yi Xian's cultivation far surpasses ours. Even if we have the power of time and space, we won't be able to trap him for too long. Di Jiang instantly came to a realization and directly revealed a terrifying truth. Let's go. Don't wait for him to break the formation. Otherwise, we'll be in big trouble. Di Jiang called out to the Candle Dragon. Both of them saw the heavy look in each other's eyes. Then, they disappeared on the spot. Obviously, if they waited for Yi Xian to break out of the formation, both of them would definitely be in trouble. They could not afford to take the risk. Trying to escape? Yi Xian was in the middle of the space-time formation. His face was ferocious and distorted. Waves of black saint energy burst out, causing the entire space-time formation to rumble and shake. Cracks began to appear. Break. Strength can break all techniques. Heaven and earth could collapse. Yi Xian roared into the sky as a destructive power burst out from his body. Following the sound of an explosion, the space-time formation that Di Jiang and the Candle Dragon had set up together shattered. Yi Xian soared into the sky as chaotic fog surrounded his body. His eyes were cold and gloomy as he looked around. Obviously, he was looking for the two ancestral sorcerers. It had to be said that the space-time energy was indeed mysterious and terrifying. Even Yi Xian had a lingering fear. If it were not for the two ancestral sorcerers' weak cultivation, Yi Xian would have suffered a great loss today. Yi Xian was very sure that if the two ancestral sorcerers had the cultivation of a saint like him, he would not be a match for the two ancestral sorcerers. Fortunately, the two of them were only sage-to-be. It was a blessing in disguise. I knew that you're not that simple. Do you think that I don't have any other tricks up my sleeve? Yi Xian smiled strangely. He formed a seal with both of his hands and a 3-inch black paper crane condensed. As the black paper crane flew to the south, Yi Xian immediately followed the black paper crane and chased after it. Spirit drawing technique. It was an extremely useless technique in the Immortal scripture. It had no other use except to lock onto a person's trace and find out their location. When Di Jiang and the Candle Dragon appeared, Yi Xian secretly performed the spirit drawing technique on them. The reason why this technique was useless was that if Yi Xian wanted to find a person, he could find the target based on the other person's aura. Naturally, this technique had no effect on him. However, it just so happened that the Candle Dragon and Di Jiang had the power of time and space, so Yi Xian was unable to sense their auras. This spirit drawing technique just so happened to restrain the two great ancestral shamans, allowing Yi Xian to know their whereabouts. Rumble. The sky shook and the universe shifted. Yi Xian moved freely in the sky. He followed the black paper crane and chased after the two ancestral sorcerers. Chapter 977. Yi Xian shuttled through the air, and streams of light turned into shadows as he moved through the endless sky. Every step he took covered a distance of millions of kilometers, and wherever he went, the world would rumble, causing an extremely terrifying commotion. So fast! The black paper crane flew in front of Yi Xian. His eyes were as gloomy as water, and he was extremely surprised. This was because, in his perception, the speed of Di Jiang and the Candle Dragon had actually surpassed his. Although he knew their location, he was unable to catch up to the two ancestral shamans. Yi Xian was not boasting. With his current cultivation of the 4 tribulations of the heavenly way, he could definitely be called the world's fastest. However, he could not stop chasing after the two ancestral sorcerers. "Let's see how you escape," Yi Xian whispered in a hoarse voice. His eyes were filled with violence. He would never let them go because he had to devour their space-time power. Rumble. Yi Xian's cultivation was fully released. His cultivation of the 4 tribulations of the heavenly way was raised to the peak. His speed increased again, and he chased after the two ancestral sorcerers with a terrifying aura. At the same time, Di Jiang and the Candle Dragon were traveling together. One of them was the ancestral sorcerer of time, while the other was the ancestral sorcerer of space. These two powers that surpassed the great way of heaven and earth allowed them to travel through time and space. Of course, the so-called time and space was just a general name. However, Di Jiang had the space magic that could tear through layers of barriers. He called this technique space speed. The Candle Dragon had the time magic. He could use time to travel through space. With the two of them working together, their speed could be said to be the best in the 3 realms. In terms of the world's fastest speed, only the space-time power could be said to be the best. Other techniques could not be compared to it at all. This was also the reason why the Heavenly Way Saints could not do anything to the two ancestral sorcerers. It was also the reason why Yi Xian could not catch up with them. He's catching up. The Candle Dragon's expression changed drastically because the aura that came from behind the two of them was too terrifying, causing their souls to tremble. Yi Xian's cultivation is much higher than yours and mine. Even the space-time formation was broken by him in an instant. You and I are definitely not his match, but he can forget about catching up with us. Go. Di Jiang growled coldly. He directly tore open the space in front of him. The two of them instantly entered the cracked space. When they reappeared, they were already hundreds of millions of miles away. The energy of space was terrifying as expected, and it was simply unimaginable. Traversing a distance of 1 trillion kilometers in an instant was something that no one in the 3 dimensions could accomplish. Rumble. Yi Xian suddenly appeared at the spot where the two of them had just appeared. The space around them had been shattered by him. Unfortunately, the two of them had still managed to escape. The power of space-time is indeed extraordinary. Yi Xian muttered coldly. A trace of unwillingness flashed through his eyes, but there was also a faint trace of madness. Di Jiang and the Candle Dragon were only sage to be. If it were not for the power of time and space, Yi Xian could have suppressed them in an instant. From this, it could be seen that the two grand sorcerers were merely sage to be. However, they were able to render Yi Xian helpless because of the power of time and space. This also proved that the power of time and space was too extraordinary. At this moment, Yi Xian once again lost track of the two of them. However, he was not disappointed because he had already planted the spirit attraction technique on the two of them. Even if the two grand sorcerers escaped to the ends of the earth, he would still be able to find them. Change. Yi Xian made a gesture with both hands to change the void. A black paper crane danced in the void. After 3 breaths, it shot toward the north. In the north. Yi Xian smiled ferociously. He took a step forward and disappeared. How is this possible? How is this possible? The North Sea glacier stretched as far as the eye could see. The two grand sorcerers were fleeing in panic. A terrifying dark figure was chasing and intercepting the two of them. This made the two grand sorcerers tremble and roar. Space shuttled, time accelerated, and the two ancestral magi fled in a sorry state. Their faces were pale and bloodless. They originally thought that they'd gotten rid of Yi Xian, but in a short 3 days, Yi Xian found them again. Trying to escape? Do you think you can escape? Yi Xian's cultivation had reached the peak. Although he did not have the speed of the two grand sorcerers, his cultivation was much higher than theirs. He also had endless energy. It was wishful thinking for the two of them to escape from his control. No, there must be something wrong. I can't sense your aura. He must have done something to our bodies. The candle dragon whispered in horror. Be careful. Di Jiang shouted in panic. Yi Xian slapped at him from millions of miles away. Di Jiang used his spatial magic to isolate this part of the world. He pulled the candle dragon and disappeared. Rumble. The sky shook and the void was in chaos. A chase began in the 3 realms. From the sky to the ground, from the deep sea to the starry sky. The two grand sorcerers used all means to get rid of Yi Xian. Unfortunately, every time the two of them thought that they'd gotten rid of Yi Xian would appear again in less than a day or 2. It simply caused their hearts to shatter, and they even felt a sense of despair. This chase lasted for 1,000 years. The entire 3 realms were shaken. The celestial court sent out the clairvoyant and the clairaudient to investigate. Several heavenly sages even opened their dharma eyes of heaven and earth to spy on them. Unfortunately, Yi Xian's cultivation was too strong. He had already concealed the secrets of heaven. Moreover, the two grand sorcerers had the power of time and space. Even the heavenly sages could not spy on what happened between the 3 of them. Another 1,000 years passed. The two grand sorcerers looked dispirited. The power of time and space around them was extremely weak. However, they were still trying their best to hide from Yi Xian's pursuit. After 2,000 years of escape, the two grand sorcerers only had the cultivation of sage-to-be. Although they had the divine sense of time and space, their cultivation was still there. How could they withstand such a huge consumption? On the other hand, Yi Xian was different. His cultivation was already Tongtian. A mere 2,000 years did not affect him at all. Instead, he was still chasing after the two grand sorcerers. No, if this goes on, you and I will not be suppressed by Yi Xian. I'm afraid we will die of exhaustion sooner or later. Outside the 33rd layer of heaven, the stars were rotating. The two ancestors of sorcerers were fleeing for their lives. Di Jiang's face was pale, and the power of space around him was extremely scattered. The candle dragon was not much better. Yi Xian definitely has a secret technique to track you and me. Now we can only act separately and remove the secret technique he planted on us. Perhaps we can still escape. The candle dragon spoke quickly. Yi Xian's terrifying aura came from behind them again. Obviously, Yi Xian had found them again. After 2,000 years of escape, the two grand sorcerers had already understood that Yi Xian must have planted some kind of secret technique on them. Otherwise, Yi Xian would not have found them so quickly. Only when they separated and had a chance to catch their breath could they remove the secret technique that Yi Xian planted on them. Okay, you split up and act separately. We will meet again after we shake off Yi Xian. Di Jiang agreed and headed directly to the Nanzhan department continent in the mortal world. The candle dragon and Di Jiang ran in the opposite direction and headed to the north continent. Rumble. The starry sky was turbulent. Stars fell. The two had just separated when Yi Xian arrived. However, the two grand sorcerers had already disappeared. They separated? Yi Xian frowned. Through the spirit guiding skill, he sensed that the two grand sorcerers were fleeing in different directions. This also made Yi Xian not know which one of them to pursue first. Fortunately, Yi Xian did not hesitate for long. After 3 breaths, he made a decision and directly chased after Dijiang. Chapter 978. Earth Immortal Realm, Nanzhan Province Continent. The Nanzhan Province Continent was one of the 4 major continents. There were many sects in the boundless expanse. Many sects fought for their orthodoxies, including Taoism, Buddhism, fiendish sects, and other sections. It could be said that the Nanzhan Province Continent was the most chaotic continent after the North Continent. It was also a paradise for the fiendish sects. Bloody fights broke out from time to time, and the human race was also in deep trouble. Ever since Nuwa destroyed the human race's fate, the human race had quietly changed. Although the human race was weak in the past, they could still stay out of the conflict between orthodoxies. However, the human race had now joined the orthodoxies of various sizes and were in daily fights. Fate was a mysterious concept, but it really existed. The future of the human race was extremely worrying. It was just that it had not been revealed yet. Mystic Fire City covered an area of 1,000,000 miles. It was a human city. The city lord, Taoist Xuanhua, was a golden immortal. Under his rule, Mystic Fire City was considered peaceful and prosperous. This was rare in the Nanzhan Province continent. However, something big happened in Mystic Fire City today. It was something big enough to destroy Mystic Fire City. A meteor first fell from the sky, directly blasting Mystic Fire City into 2 halves. Countless humans died tragically in the aftermath of the explosion. Just as Mystic Fire City was about to investigate what had happened, an extremely terrifying figure descended on Mystic Fire City. In an instant, it sealed off the entire Mystic Fire City. No one could escape from the city. May I know which exalted immortal is controlling Mystic Fire City? Taoist Xuanhua hurried over with a group of disciples. He saw a figure standing in the sky above Mystic Fire City. Just the light radiating from the figure was enough to make Taoist Xuanhua's heart skip a beat. His primordial spirit felt like it was about to shatter. Yi Xian was dressed in black, and 3,000 strands of black hair hung behind his head. His hair fluttered in the wind as the violent winds howled. His eyes were like lightning as he looked down at the profound fire city below him, and strands of chaotic fog filled the air. You actually hid in a human city. But do you think you can escape like this? Yi Xian muttered to himself. His eyes were extremely gloomy. Although the soul channeling technique could track Dijiang's whereabouts, it was only an approximate range. There were tens of millions of living beings in this human city. Yi Xian wanted to find Dijiang was like finding a needle in a haystack. Exalted Immortal, who are you? Exalted Immortal? Taoist Xuanhua trembled as he asked from afar. He merely glanced at Yi Xian, and his primordial spirit trembled to the extreme. An extremely terrifying feeling arose in his heart. Daluo, it must be Daluo. Taoist Xuanhua's cultivation. Taoist Xuanhua was certain was Daluo or Taoist Xuanhua. Today, to time, Xuanhua's S. Was to Taoist was. Taoist. Unfortunately, Yi Xian chose to ignore Taoist Xuanhua. All his attention was on Dijiang. How could he have time to deal with a mere golden immortal? Dijiang, as long as you obediently surrender, I will not make things difficult for you. Yi Xian's voice echoed in the entire Xuanhua city. All the living beings in the city looked at him, but Dijiang did not respond. Dijiang? Who is Dijiang? Taoist Xuanhua whispered in fear. His disciple's expression changed greatly, as if he had heard something terrible. Master, isn't there an ancestral sorcerer called Dijiang among the 12 ancestors of sorcerers? Are you kidding me? How is that possible? Taoist Xuanhua's expression changed greatly. His entire body trembled. He could not believe what he had just heard. Who is Dijiang? Dijiang was one of the 12 ancestors of sorcery from ancient times, and a figure at the peak of the sage-to-be. If Dijiang was hiding in his Xuanhua city, then what kind of terrifying existence would this self-proclaimed emperor be? Taoist Xuanhua dared not imagine it. He could not imagine it. If even Dijiang was being hunted down by this person, then his identity was simply unimaginably terrifying. In Xuanhua City, Di Jiang was hiding in an ordinary house. His space magic had completely covered him, so that his aura would not leak out. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. He was using his space magic to search for the spirit drawing art that Yi Xian had planted. Found it? Suddenly, Di Jiang was excited. He had finally found the spirit drawing art that Yi Xian had planted. This also allowed him to quickly activate his cultivation and begin to refine it. As long as he could refine the spirit drawing art, he could completely escape Yi Xian's pursuit. By then, it would be more difficult for Yi Xian to find him. In the sky above Xuanhua City, Yi Xian's expression suddenly changed because the black paper crane in front of him began to fade. This meant that Di Jiang was refining the spirit drawing art that he had planted. Not good. Yi Xian growled. He would never allow this to happen. Otherwise, he would fail on the verge of success. Di Jiang, do you think that I won't be able to find you if you hide in a human city? Yi Xian sneered. His face gradually became ferocious and sinister. The aura of ruthlessness and desiredness around him rose terrifyingly. As the saying went, a general's success was built on thousands of bones. Only by stepping on piles of bones could one climb to the top of the 9 heavens. Yi Xian understood this very well. Yi Xian's palm held up the sky. The world within thousands of miles was shaking. A giant palm that covered the sky condensed and directly appeared in the sky, enveloping the entire Xuanhua City. The 6 desires are ruthless, and the world is heartless. Kill. Yi Xian roared mercilessly. The giant palm that covered the sky crashed down on Xuanhua City. This palm had the power to bury all things. No one could survive this attack. Taoist Xuanhua and his disciples roared in grief at this scene. If this attack really landed, the entire Xuanhua City would be turned into ashes. All the living beings in the city would also die. Unfortunately, no one could change Yi Xian's will. If he failed to massacre the city today, Di Jiang would escape from his hands. He would never allow this to happen. Rumble. Xuanhua City was collapsing, turning into ashes. All the living beings in the city exploded into clouds of blood mist. A 1,000,000-mile palm print appeared on the ground. The blood mist filled the sky. Yi Xian's attack had killed thousands of living beings. Among them were not only human cultivators but also many mortals. It could be said that this was an endless massacre. Boom. Suddenly, a silver light shot up into the sky. Di Jiang was bathed in blood. It was obvious that he had been severely injured by this attack. He did not even look back and wanted to escape. Unfortunately, Yi Xian was prepared. How could he let him escape so easily? Seal. The world in all directions fluctuated. Black Saint energy turned into chains and instantly entangled Di Jiang. Yi Xian appeared in front of him in an instant. He pointed at Di Jiang's forehead and restrained him. Yi Xian, you're so cruel. Di Jiang panicked when he was suppressed by Yi Xian. He even shouted angrily at Yi Xian. He had never thought that Yi Xian would commit such an endless massacre in order to capture him. Chapter 979. To think that you would be so ruthless as a fellow human. Aren't you afraid of karma causing you to suffer an unparalleled calamity in the future? Di Jiang yelled out in shock. Di Jiang had never expected Yi Xian to be this vicious. To think that he would be so heartless as to destroy the entire Mystic Fire City. After all, everyone in the Mystic Fire City was from the human race. Di Jiang's plan was great. If he were to hide in the city of the human race, Yi Xian would definitely hold back. That would give him ample time to cultivate the spirit attraction skill as well. However, he had miscalculated. On the path to the peak of the 9 heavens, Yi Xian would not show any mercy. Even if he were to destroy an entire city of the human race, he would not hesitate in the slightest. Human race. Yi Xian replied indifferently, the human race of the Earth Immortal world has nothing to do with me. My ancestral ground is not in the Earth Immortal world. What? The moment Di Jiang heard this, he was stunned. He had yet to comprehend the chilliness in Yi Xian's words. As for Yi Xian, there was no way he would explain it to Di Jiang. After all, Di Jiang was already a dead man in his eyes. How dare you massacre a city? You. Dao Master Xuanhua's face was pale as he yelled out from afar. The way he looked at Yi Xian was filled with fear and anger. He was the city lord of Mystic Fire City. Now that Mystic Fire City was destroyed, he had an undeniable responsibility. Furthermore, Mystic Fire City was under the control of the Tai Immortal sect. If the Tai Immortal sect were to pursue this matter, he would definitely die. Noises. Yi Xian didn't even look at Daoist Xuanhua as he spat out these two words. The entire space around him was destroyed, and Daoist Xuanhua and his disciples were annihilated. Not even their primordial spirits were left behind. Transform. After killing Daoist Yi Xian, the entire Mystic Fire City was wiped out. Not a single living being had ever seen Yi Xian again. Meanwhile, Yi Xian waved his hand and created a sky-blotting water screen, directly wiping out everything within a radius of 1,000,000 miles without leaving behind any aura. Yi Xian did not kill people for no reason. Everything he did was to cover himself. If he had kept Daoist Xuanhua alive, those heavenly Dao saints would have been able to find out through Daoist Xuanhua's memories that he had hunted down Dijiang. Yi Xian wouldn't leave any hidden dangers for himself. Although the heavenly Dao saint was no longer a threat to him, it was better to be careful than to sail a boat for 10,000 years. It was always right to be cautious. Rumble. Yi Xian brought Dijiang with him and instantly disappeared from the spot. In less than half an incense stick of time, a few heavenly Dao saints' secrets quietly descended onto this area. It was obvious that they were the methods of the heavenly Dao saints. Unfortunately, these strands of heavenly Dao saints' secrets did not yield any results as Yi Xian had already turned the area into a vacuum. This also caused the strands of heavenly Dao saints' secrets to return empty-handed. On a nameless mountain in the Nanzhan section continent. Green mountains and clear waters, willow trees swayed gently. Halfway up the mountain, there was a broken cave. At this moment, a shrill and angry curse could be heard. Yi Xian, you bastard! What do you want to do to me? Dijiang was limp at Yi Xian's feet like a dead dog. At this moment, all of his cultivation was sealed and he could not use his spatial powers. His eyes were filled with great despair, but he still cursed Yi Xian. What do I want to do? Yi Xian smiled. His smile was very sincere, but his eyes were extremely hot as he looked at Dijiang, as if he was looking at a rare treasure. Do you know how many years I have been looking for you and the candle dragon? Yi Xian did not immediately use the Tribulation Transcender's Devour on Dijiang. There was a faint sense of desolation around him, and his eyes were faintly red. Yi Xian, Dijiang and I are only sage to be cultivators, and you have achieved the Tao in another way. The two of us are no threat to you at all. My Wu tribe also avoids you. Why do you have to kill us? Dijiang roared unwillingly. Obviously, Dijiang thought that Yi Xian had been chasing him and the candle dragon because he saw them as a threat and wanted to destroy the entire Wu tribe in one fell swoop. Kill us? No. Yi Xian shook his head and said, the so-called Wu tribe is just an ant in my eyes. I don't even care about Hutu. I'm not so bored as to target your Wu tribe. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Dijiang was stunned, and his eyes were filled with confusion. He was a little confused. Since Yi Xian did not want to destroy the Wu tribe, why did he force him and the candle dragon? Actually, I haven't had a good talk with someone for a long time. Before you die, I'll tell you everything. Yi Xian finally calmed down. His eyes were a little absent-minded, and his aura was slightly lonely and bleak. Actually, the three realms of heaven, earth, and man are just a cage. There is a very, very big world outside. You and I are just prisoners in this cage. You can even say that we are frogs in a well. The power of karma, the power of nirvana, the power of destiny, the power of chaos, and the power of time and space that I yearn for day and night. Yi Xian whispered in a hoarse voice, falling into an indescribable state. The power of time? The power of space? Dijiang murmured to himself. His face gradually turned pale, as if he had vaguely understood Yi Xian's true goal. That's right. The power of time and space. Yi Xian nodded and said, in the three realms of heaven, earth, and man, only you and the candle dragon have the power of time and space. These are your innate powers. Unfortunately, the two of you can't cultivate these two powers that surpass the great Tao of heaven and earth on your own. This is simply a waste of natural resources, Yi Xian sighed. You want to control the power of time and space? Yi Xian had already made it so clear. If Di Jiang still did not understand Yi Xian's goal, he would scold himself for being an idiot. You're both right and wrong. Yi Xian shook his head slightly. His eyes were in a trance as he said, I do want to control the power of time and space. However, the two of you don't have these two powers. These are only your innate powers. The true power of time and space can reverse the river of time and travel between the past and the future. That's the true power of time and space. The two of you haven't even touched the surface, Yi Xian said with a hint of mockery. Clearly, Yi Xian had understood one thing during the 2,000 years of pursuit. Di Jiang and the Candle Dragon had not even touched the surface of the power of time and space. They had only relied on their innate powers. In Yi Xian's opinion, this was simply a waste of natural resources. Of course, Yi Xian also understood that it wasn't that Di Jiang and the Candle Dragon didn't want to cultivate these two powers, but that their innate divine abilities were innate divine abilities. This was something that they were born with, and there was no such thing as a cultivation path. What a joke! Even if you want to control the power of time and space, do you think you can obtain my space just by killing me? Just as Di Jiang was mocking him, his words came to an abrupt halt. He froze on the spot as if he had been struck by lightning. It was as if he had thought of something extremely terrifying at this moment. I do? Di Jiang's teeth were chattering as he looked at Yi Xian with an expression of extreme fear. This was because he'd guessed an extremely terrifying thing. Chapter 980. It seems that you have guessed it? Yi Xian smiled. His white teeth were extremely dazzling, but when Di Jiang saw them, his body and mind trembled. You stole our innate magical abilities? Di Jiang screamed in horror. Congratulations, you got it right. Yi Xian's smile disappeared and turned into a cruel and ferocious expression. As your reward, I will give you a quick death. Tribulation Transcenders Devour. Rumble. Yi Xian made a hand seal with both hands, and a series of gloomy and strange seals appeared in his hands. His whole body turned into a terrifying black fog and instantly swallowed Di Jiang. Di Jiang screamed miserably. Unfortunately, under the heaven-defying technique of the Tribulation Transcender Devour, his body began to collapse. Wisps of black smoke rippled out from his body, and he constantly screamed in pain. After swallowing you, I will be able to master the power of space. This will be your greatest honor. Yi Xian laughed cruelly, and his whole body fell into extreme excitement. Yi Xian, you won't have a good death. Even if my soul disperses today, you'll definitely die without a burial ground in the future. Di Jiang cursed bitterly before he died, and then no sound came out. Only the black fog that Yi Xian had turned into rippling in this cave. At the same time, far away in the ancestral land of the Wu tribe in the small world, Huda was sitting cross-legged in the ancestor sorcerer temple of Di Jiang with the 9 ancestors of sorcerer. With a loud bang, the statue of ancestor sorcerer of Di Jiang collapsed. Di Jiang is dead. Hutu clenched her fists, her eyes gradually turned red, and a drop of tears dripped from her eyes. Yi Xian, our witch race is absolutely irreconcilable with you. If we don't kill you, how can we face our dead clansmen? The 9 ancestral witches roared angrily. Di Jiang's death made them angry and heartbroken. Their hatred for Yi Xian had reached the extreme. Look. Suddenly, Zhurong pointed at the broken statue of Di Jiang in surprise. This also made Hudu and the others temporarily calm down and look at the broken statue of Di Jiang. Panga blood essence? Di Jiang's Panga blood essence? When Huda saw the drop of dark red blood floating in Di Jiang's statue, she was first stunned, and then extremely excited laughter came from her mouth. Di Jiang left his Panga blood in his statue. Did he foresee this calamity long ago? Huda Rong said excitedly. In fact, when Di Jiang and the Candle Dragon returned to the sorcerer tribe, they had left their Pangu's blood essence in their respective statues. They were afraid that something bad would happen to them and the Pangu's blood essence would fall into Yi Xian's hands. However, Dijiang did not expect that he would really die, and his Pangu blood essence would become the last hope of the Wu tribe. Quick, go to the Candle Dragon's divine temple. Huda seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly called the 9 ancestral witches to go to the ancestral witch temple where the Candle Dragon was. Although Huda did not want the Candle Dragon to be killed by Yi Xian, now that Dijiang was dead, the Candle Dragon should be in great danger. The only thing they could do was to stay in the ancestral witch temple and wait for the final result. Nothing could happen to the Pangu's blood essence, because it was the key to condensing the real body of Pangu, and also the last hope of the Wu tribe. In the middle of the nameless mountain, Yi Xian sat cross-legged, and a silver light appeared around him. This silver light was mysterious and deep, giving people a feeling of ethereal spirituality. It also made people feel like they were looking at flowers in the fog. The faintly discernible power of space was extremely thin and difficult to detect, but it really existed. At this moment, it was flowing around Yi Xian's body. 1,000 years. A full 1,000 years. Yi Xian had refined it for a full 1,000 years before he completely took over Dijiang's spatial magical ability. Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. His pupils had turned silver-white, and they were like ancient stars that were rotating slightly. The surrounding space collapsed inch by inch, and this terrifying fluctuation continuously spread out in all directions, instantly turning the nameless mountain he was on into nothingness. Nothing remained, and the world became a vacuum. This was the power of space. Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the space crack and slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. The silver light around his body quietly dissipated, and the surrounding space cracks gradually calmed down until the world became clear again. Sure enough, Yi Xian sighed, and a touch of disappointment appeared in his eyes. He had used the Tribulation Transcender's Devour to devour Dijiang's innate magical ability, and had grasped the basics of spatial magical ability. However, a magical ability was a magical ability, and this was not the power of space. It was just a prototype of the power of space. Although there was only a difference of 2 words between the two, the gap between them was like the difference between heaven and earth. The power of space could shuttle through the universe, and it could even ignore the obstruction of any barrier. The spatial magical ability was just Dijiang's innate magical ability, and it could not even be considered as the tip of the iceberg of the power of space. However, Yi Xian was not too disappointed because he had already expected this result. The only function of the Tribulation Transcender's Devour was to devour the innate magical ability of others. It was normal that he had obtained the spatial magical ability from Dijiang. However, Yi Xian was different from Dijiang. Yi Xian did not turn Dijiang's innate magical ability into his own. Instead, he refined it into a space seed and planted it in his body. This was because Yi Xian was very clear about one thing. What he wanted was not the spatial magical ability, but the power of space. Only by refining Dijiang's spatial magical ability into a space seed could he cultivate the true power of space. The seed had been planted, but whether it could take root and sprout depended on Yi Xian's cultivation. As for how to cultivate the power of space, Yi Xian also had a vague direction. However, what Yi Xian wanted to do now was not to study the power of space. He had more important things to do. The Candle Dragon. Yes, it was the Candle Dragon. He had just devoured Dijiang's innate magical ability, and he had not found the Candle Dragon yet. He had to find the Candle Dragon as soon as possible and devour the other party's time innate skill. This was the most important thing. Buzz. Yi Xian made a gesture with both hands, and the spirit attraction technique rippled slightly, but the black paper crane did not appear. Obviously, the Candle Dragon had refined the spirit attraction technique in the past 1,000 years. Sure enough, Yi Xian waved his hand to disperse the spirit attraction technique. There was no disappointment on his face, as if he had expected this result. Yi Xian's intelligence was outstanding. How could he not know that the Candle Dragon had refined the spirit attraction technique? After all, 1,000 years had passed, and the Candle Dragon had the time to do so. However, Yi Xian naturally had his own way. Change. Suddenly, Yi Xian made a gesture with both hands, and his entire body was covered by the black fog. In less than 3 breaths, the black fog slowly dissipated, and he turned into Dijiang with a smile on his face. Regardless of height, appearance, or even the aura on his body, Yi Xian was exactly the same as Dijiang. There was no difference at all. A wisp of silver light flickered around him, and the surrounding space faded slightly. At this moment, Yi Xian was Dijiang. Even if Yi Xian stood in front of the 12 ancient witches, they would not be able to see through Yi Xian's real body. After devouring Dijiang's innate magical ability, Yi Xian naturally knew all of Dijiang's spatial techniques and memories, so he naturally knew how to contact the candle dragon. Everything was within Yi Xian's plan. Although the spirit attraction technique had lost its effect, he had thought of this when he was chasing Dijiang back then. Fortunately, everything was under his control. Candle Dragon, you're the only one left now. Do you think you can escape? Yi Xian smiled eerily. He flicked a silver light out of his finger and directly tore the space apart and disappeared. Clearly, this was the way to contact the Candle Dragon, and he only needed to wait for the Candle Dragon's reply. Chapter 981. Sumeru Fairyland. Sumeru Fairyland was a miniature world isolated from the 3 realms. It was also the dojo of the ancestral wizard of time, the Candle Dragon. Ever since he separated from Dijiang and escaped from Yi Xian's pursuit, he had returned to Sumeru Fairyland. After 1,000 years, the Candle Dragon had finally refined the spirit attraction technique on his body. He hid in the Sumeru Immortal realm and waited for Dijiang to contact him. He was even faintly worried that Dijiang would be able to escape Yi Xian's pursuit. He sat with his legs crossed and breathed. As the Candle Dragon breathed, his body became illusory. His time ability lingered around him, but he was anxious. He breathed out a mouthful of murky air, and his time ability calmed down. The Candle Dragon slowly opened his eyes as a silver light suddenly appeared in front of him. Great! The Candle Dragon was delighted. He sensed that Dijiang was calling him, and he knew that he had escaped from Yi Xian's pursuit. Come to Sumeru Fairyland quickly. The Candle Dragon quickly formed a seal, and a white light was flicked out of his finger. It was obvious that he was telling Yi Xian where he was. When the Candle Dragon was done, he finally felt relieved. He was glad that he and Dijiang had escaped from this life and death crisis. Suddenly, the Candle Dragon was stunned. His eyelids were twitching rapidly, and he suddenly felt that his mind was trembling. An extremely bad feeling appeared in his heart. Something's not right. The Candle Dragon had an extraordinary sense of danger. As he was the ancestral wizard of time, he was extremely sensitive to the future and the past. Death calamity? It's a supreme death calamity? The Candle Dragon's face was pale as he muttered in horror. He became restless. Dijiang and I have already escaped from Yi Xian's pursuit. How can there be a death calamity? The Candle Dragon looked extremely solemn. He could not believe his senses. As the ancestral wizard of time, the Candle Dragon's sense of danger was better than anyone else's. Although he could not travel between the past and the future, he had an extraordinary sense of what was about to happen. Dijiang, it's Dijiang? All of a sudden, the Candle Dragon's expression changed drastically. He was originally fine, but just as he sent a signal to Dijiang, he was met with an unparalleled death. This must have something to do with Dijiang. Time acceleration. The Candle Dragon's face was grim and anxious. He suddenly let out a low roar and unleashed his time divine ability to its maximum. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Clearly, he wanted to see what would happen in the future, even if it meant damaging his own cultivation base. Prying into the future was something that defied the heavens. Even if he was the Time Grand Wizard, he couldn't do it rashly. Otherwise, he would surely suffer the backlash of the time energy and the merciless suppression of the heavenly Tao. Fortunately, the Candle Dragon was the Time Grand Wizard, and his innate divine ability was the time divine ability. At this moment, when he used time acceleration, the surrounding time seemed to be speeding up, and scenes appeared in his eyes. Someone came to the Penglai deity realm alone. It was Dijiang, who was as close as a brother to him. Just as the candle dragon was excitedly chatting with Dijiang suppressed him with one palm. Then, Dijiang turned into a terrifying black fog and swallowed the candle dragon. Ah! The candle dragon screamed and suddenly woke up from time acceleration. Only then did he realize that what he had experienced was an illusion, and Dijiang wasn't around. But why does he want to kill me? The candle dragon whispered in horror. He was completely stunned. Everything that he had experienced just now seemed to have happened to him. This made the candle dragon's body and mind tremble uncontrollably. Go quickly. We can't meet Dijiang. The candle dragon didn't know why Dijiang wanted to kill him, nor did he know why Dijiang turned into a strange black fog and swallowed him. However, he trusted his time divine ability very much because what he had seen just now was what was going to happen in the future. The candle dragon didn't delay at all. He was about to tear the Sumeru deity realm apart and leave this place. However, before he could move, a figure suddenly entered the Sumeru deity realm and stopped him. Where are you going? Dijiang asked with a slightly stunned expression. Dijiang? The candle dragon's face was ghastly pale, and his eyes were filled with panic. He quickly retreated and unleashed his time divine ability to prevent Dijiang from attacking him. Candle dragon, what are you doing? Dijiang looked confused. He was completely confused. Dijiang, where's Yixian? The candle dragon couldn't forget what he had seen in time acceleration. He stared at Dijiang gloomily and asked about Yixian's whereabouts. Listen to me slowly. Fortunately, I hid in the human city and refined the secret skill that he planted in me. That's how I managed to escape from him. Dijiang spoke tirelessly about the course of events, but a wisp of imperceptible surprise flashed past the depths of his eyes. Of course, Dijiang had already been devoured by Yixian. The person in front of him was naturally Yixian. When he received the candle dragon's reply, he immediately rushed to the Sumeru deity realm. But now, the candle dragon acted as if he was facing a great enemy. This caused Yixian to be secretly surprised. Could it be that he'd seen through his true body? Impossible. That's definitely impossible. At that moment, it was impossible for there to be any flaws when he transformed into Dijiang. After all, he had already devoured Dijiang's talent divine ability. At that moment, regardless of whether it was his appearance or the spatial aura that he released, he was exactly the same as Dijiang. However, Yixian was confused. Why is the candle dragon so vigilant when he sees me? Moreover, he looks as if I'm going to attack him? Could it be the time divine ability? Suddenly, Yixian thought of a great possibility. That was the candle dragon's time divine ability. This was the only explanation that made sense. At that moment, the candle dragon was listening to Yixian's narration. However, he kept looking at Yixian. It was obvious that he was trying to see if this Dijiang in front of him was Yixian. Unfortunately, the candle dragon was disappointed in the end. The Dijiang in front of him was exactly the same as the Dijiang that he was familiar with. Regardless of whether it was his expression or the spatial aura that was rippling around him, there was no difference. Let me ask you. Back then, we had calculated Yixian's origin together. What was the conclusion that we reached in the end? The candle dragon couldn't forget what he had experienced in time acceleration. This made him quickly ask Yixian about it. He's not from the Earth Immortal realm, Yixian answered quickly. Back then, Yixian killed the people from the sorcerer tribe. Back then, we worked together to calculate Yixian's past. However, all we got was a fog. The only person that we couldn't calculate with our time divine ability was Yixian. Therefore, back then, we concluded that he wasn't from the Earth Immortal realm. Yixian explained in detail. As he had devoured Dijiang's talent divine ability, he naturally knew Dijiang's memory. Therefore, he was not afraid of the candle dragon's question at all. It's really you. Hearing Yixian's answer, the candle dragon heaved a sigh of relief. He knew that the Dijiang in front of him was real. However, the sense of danger in his heart had not dissipated. Therefore, he didn't dare to be careless. Dijiang, do you know what I saw when I performed time acceleration? The candle dragon thought about it and looked at Yixian solemnly. Chapter 982. What did you see? Yi Xian asked curiously. I saw you suppressing me and transforming into a ball of strange black fog that drowned me. I turned into ashes and died in an extremely miserable manner, the candle dragon muttered in horror. What a time ability! Yi Xian looked calm on the surface when he heard what the candle dragon said. However, he was extremely shocked on the inside. He did not expect the time ability to be so terrifying that the candle dragon could predict that he was going to kill him. Are you kidding me? We're like brothers. Why would I kill you? Yi Xian pretended to be angry and walked towards the candle dragon. Stop right there. The candle dragon suddenly roared as his time ability exploded forth. He continuously retreated backwards, maintaining a safe distance from Yi Xian the entire time. Candle dragon, what are you doing? Yi Xian frowned and pretended to be unhappy. Di Jiang, although I see you as my brother, I believe in my time ability more. Don't take another step forward. Otherwise, I'll leave this place immediately, the candle dragon growled. At this moment, Yi Xian's brows were tightly knitted together. It wasn't that he didn't want to suppress the candle dragon, but that the candle dragon was already on guard. If he were to act rashly, the candle dragon would definitely activate his time ability to escape. At that time, it would be even more difficult for him to find the candle dragon. Yi Xian valued Di Jiang's space ability very much. However, Yi Xian valued the candle dragon's time ability even more. Time and space. Time was ranked first and space was ranked second. From the name, it could be seen that the time ability was much more powerful than the space ability. Traveling through the past and future and walking on the river of time, the so-called time was too mysterious, and it was also the power that Yi Xian wanted the most. Therefore, Yi Xian did not dare to be careless at all. He could not let the candle dragon escape so easily. He had to stabilize the candle dragon first. That was what he needed to do at this moment. You and I are like brothers. How can you not believe me? Yi Xian looked like he was heartbroken. He even scolded the candle dragon angrily. Candle dragon, do you still remember that Dong Huangtai and Di Jun worked together to severely injure you? If I did not fight with my life on the line, you would have died in the Great Witch Demon War. Do you still remember when you begged me for the Tao of Space all those years ago? Did I even hesitate to teach you all of my understanding of the Tao of Space? Yi Xian continuously searched through the memories of the candle dragon, bringing up the past one by one. This caused the candle dragon's expression to be extremely complicated, and a trace of shame appeared in his eyes. Now, you've escaped from Yi Xian's evil hands, but you don't believe me. Fine. From now on, our brotherhood is over. You go your way and I'll go mine. Yi Xian angrily refuted. He even flicked his sleeves and turned around to leave. However, a sinister expression flashed through his eyes. He didn't really want to leave this place. This was just a method for him to retreat in order to advance. Yi Xian believed that the candle dragon would definitely ask him to stay. As expected, before Yi Xian could take a few steps, the candle dragon's expression changed. He immediately stopped Yi Xian and even bowed to Yi Xian. Brother Di Jiang, I was wrong. I hope you won't be angry. Yi Xian scoffed. Candle dragon, we've known each other for many years. We're both from the Pangu lineage. Can't you tell if I'm real or fake? It seems like your time ability has led you to the wrong path. At this moment, the candle dragon looked extremely ashamed. How could he not remember how well Di Jiang treated him? Moreover, he was very confused now. Could there really be a problem with his time ability? Moreover, the candle dragon was very sure that the Di Jiang standing in front of him was real. Perhaps he was really anxious about being hunted down by Yi Xian, so he had an illusion in the time acceleration. Brother Di Jiang, I was wrong. The more the candle dragon thought about it, the more he blamed himself. He hurriedly apologized to Yi Xian. Yi Xian let out a long sigh. He walked to the candle dragon, and the candle dragon did not dodge. He allowed Yi Xian to pat his shoulder and said, You and I are from the same sect. Why would I blame you? However, Yi Xian is too scary. You and I have to be careful in the future. Although the candle dragon allowed Yi Xian to approach him, the time ability around him didn't disperse, and Yi Xian didn't suppress him at the first possible moment. This was because he'd already seen how terrifying the time ability was, so he definitely wouldn't allow himself to fail. He had to kill him in one strike. Now that my brother has returned, you and I can use the time ability to deduce the future of the witch tribe. We can also see what Yi Xian is going to do in the future. Although the candle dragon had let down his guard against Di Jiang, he was still extremely afraid of Yi Xian. This was because he had indeed seen Di Jiang turn into a black fog and drown him in the time acceleration. He could not get over this hurdle. Now that Di Jiang was here, with their time ability, they would definitely be able to deduce the future accurately. This was also the candle dragon's consolation. All right. Yi Xian's eyes lit up. He immediately activated the space ability, and the entire Sumeru illusion began to become illusory. The candle dragon even formed a seal with both hands and performed the time acceleration again. Buzz. Time and space changed, and the scene became real. The time flow was speeding up, and scenes appeared in the candle dragon's eyes again. Di Jiang was performing the technique beside him with a smile on his face. The candle dragon was also performing the time acceleration. However, Di Jiang's face changed strangely. He turned into Yi Xian and slammed his palm toward the candle dragon's head. Ah! The candle dragon woke up with a scream. The time ability around him instantly dissipated, and he suddenly opened his eyes to look at Di Jiang. It was also at this moment when the candle dragon was in a daze that Yi Xian finally revealed his fangs. Now! Yi Xian suddenly turned into his original appearance. While the candle dragon was in a daze, he slammed his palm toward the candle dragon. The candle dragon did not have any strength to dodge at all. Bang! There was an explosion in the void, and blood spurted out. The candle dragon was hit by Yi Xian's palm on the candle dragon's head. Blood kept spurting out of his mouth, and black chains immediately wrapped around his body. He was confined in the void by Yi Xian. Haha! All of this happened in the blink of an eye. When Yi Xian was done, he laughed wildly and excitedly. On the other hand, the candle dragon was dispirited. He was severely injured by Yi Xian's terrifying attack and was on the verge of death. At this moment, he was confined by the black chains and could not use his time ability at all. It's you. It's actually you? Looking at Yi Xian's sinister and cruel face, the candle dragon screamed with a trembling voice. His eyes were filled with extreme regret. Why didn't he believe his own judgment? Why didn't he believe what he saw in the time acceleration? It was too late. Everything was too late. The candle dragon finally understood that Di Jiang had already met with a calamity. Yi Xian had used some method to turn into Di Jiang and put him in a hopeless situation where he would definitely die. Chapter 983. Yi Xian laughed and said, "Candle dragon, you didn't have to die. Unfortunately, you were too careless." Yi Xian was completely excited. At this moment, the candle dragon was imprisoned in his hand, and he was about to obtain the time ability. How long had it been? Yi Xian couldn't even remember clearly. He'd coveted the power of time and space for too long, to the point that he yearned for it day and night. Today was the day he completed his dream. Yi Xian was looking forward to breaking the shackles of heaven and earth, reversing the river of time, and traveling between the past and the future. Thinking about the means he would have in the future, Yi Xian was so excited that he couldn't extricate himself, because he had finally embarked on a path of invincibility. Yi Xian, you won't die a good death. The candle dragon was in despair. He knew that he was going to die today, but even if he died, he had to curse Yi Xian. The hatred in his eyes was so strong that it almost solidified. Won't die a good death? Yi Xian laughed coldly and said, I don't know if I will die a good death, but you will die under the tribulation transcender's bite. Swallow. Roar. Like a ferocious beast roaring in the ninth heaven, Yi Xian activated the tribulation transcender's bite, turning into a terrifying black fog that instantly flooded the candle dragon. The candle dragon screamed miserably and died. Ancestral land of the witch race, ancestral witch temple. Bang. The candle dragon's statue exploded, and the entire ancestral witch temple shook. Hutu and the 9 ancestral witches were heartbroken, and angry voices came out of their mouths. Yi Xian, The witch race will fight you to the death. Hudu coldly reprimanded, and the other 9 ancestral witches were also full of hatred. Everyone was in great grief. Dijiang was dead, and so was the candle dragon. Only 10 of the 12 ancestral witches were left, and they were hiding in the small world. This was simply the greatest shame in the history of the witch race. Abruptly, Ho Tu flipped her hand and waved. A drop of Pangu spirit blood flew out of the broken statue and was taken into her hand. Dijiang and Candle Join are dead, but their Pangu spirit blood is still here. They will be the last hope of our kind, said Huda seriously. If we don't take revenge for this, we magi will have lived in vain in the 3 realms. Zhurong roared with hatred. Hud, don't hesitate. Generate your Pangu body and fight Yi Xian to the death. Gong Gong growled. As the 2 ancestral sorcerers spoke out, the rest of the ancestral sorcerers echoed in anger. Everyone had a mournful look on their faces. Their hatred for Yi Xian had reached its peak. Pangu's true body? Hudu murmured to herself. She looked around at the 9 ancestral sorcerers and said solemnly, generating Pangu's true body is not a trivial matter. Although the 12 ancestral sorcerers have the method of generating Pangu's true body, they have never used it. We must be fully prepared before generating Pangu's true body. Yes, Pangu's true body is not a trivial matter. We must be united to ensure that nothing goes wrong, said Xian Ming in a deep voice. Then what are we waiting for? Let's quickly cultivate this method. When Pangu's true body is born, we must kill Yi Xian, said ancestral sorcerer Tianhao coldly. Pangu's true body is not that simple. Although we have the Pangu spirit blood of Dijiang and Candle Dragon, they are dead. We must find 2 people to inherit the spirit blood. Only then can we generate Pangu's true body. And don't forget that if we want to generate Pangu's true body, we need to practice and reach the realm of being united to unleash the power of Pangu's true body. Reminded Huda first. Ancestral sorcerer, we are willing to inherit Pangu's spirit blood and generate Pangu's true body together with the other ancestral sorcerers. Suddenly, 2 figures entered the ancestral sorcerer temple. One of them was ancient sorcerer Chiyu, while the other was a headless man with a pair of eyes and a mouth on his navel. Chiyu? Xingtian? Huda's eyes lit up and she looked relieved. Needless to say, Chiyu was a top expert below the ancestral sorcerer and a real sage-to-be. Except for the lack of Pangu's spirit blood and divine sense, Chiyu was the most suitable candidate. Xing Tian was even more incredible. In the Great War of Sorcerer and Demon, demon god Xing Tian went to the ancient demon court alone. Although his head was cut off by Eastern Emperor Tai and Emperor Jun and he was defeated, Xing Tian's battle also established his reputation. Okay, you 2 will inherit these 2 drops of Pangu's spirit blood. I will also teach you the method to condense Pangu's true body. I hope we can do it as soon as possible, Putsu said solemnly. On this day, dark clouds rumbled in the sorcerer tribe. The 12 divine beings killing formation was activated. 12 towering figures sat cross-legged in the formation, and an extremely terrifying aura spread out. Hutu and the others did not know how long it would take to condense Pangu's true body, but they believed that when Pangu's true body appeared, it would be the time of Yi Xian's death. Shumi Fairyland. Yi Xian sat cross-legged. His body was illusory, and 2 mysterious beams of light twined around him. The time and space of this small world were changing, giving people a feeling that the universe was upside down and the yin and yang were in chaos. Time acceleration. Suddenly Yi Xian roared, and the scene around him flowed quickly. Obviously, he was using the divine sense of time to peek into the future. Rumble. Various scenes and images were presented. A towering giant appeared in front of Yi Xian's eyes, and he was attacking this giant. The boundless world was constantly collapsing, and a scene of destruction appeared. The mirror shattered and returned to reality. Yi Xian's face turned pale, and the power of the heavenly Tao suddenly suppressed him. However, it was blocked by the chaotic fog around him. Suppression of the heavenly Tao? Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes, and a look of understanding flashed across his eyes. It seemed that the divine sense of time was not tolerated by heaven and earth. Every time he used this technique, not only would the power of the heavenly Tao suppress him, but even the divine sense of time would backfire on him. Fortunately, Yi Xian's cultivation was among the 4 tribulations of the heavenly Tao. Whether it was the backfire of the divine sense of time or the suppression of the power of the heavenly Tao, it did not affect him much. Pangu's true body? Yi Xian was slightly startled, because he saw an indomitable giant in the time acceleration, and he was in the middle of a great battle with this giant. Yi Xian did not need to think to know that this giant was Pangu's true body. Unfortunately, the time acceleration could only peek into the future, and he did not see the outcome of this battle. After all, the divine sense of time was only a divine sense, and this was not the power of time that allowed Yi Xian to walk between the past and the future. Moreover, the future was unpredictable. Even if Yi Xian truly controlled the power of time and space, the future could be changed from the present. Therefore, the power of time and space could be said to be extremely mysterious. At this moment, Yi Xian had only scratched the surface through the divine sense of time. Chapter 984. It seems that Hutu is behind this. Yi Xian murmured to himself. He could guess that the real body of Pangu was related to the Wu tribe in Hutu, but Yi Xian did not care too much about it. Yi Xian did not know how strong the real body of Pangu was, but he knew that he would become stronger and stronger. Because he had devoured the gifted magic of the 2 ancestors of sorcerers, he had truly opened his path to invincibility. The strong would always be strong. He had to have the spirit to defeat all his enemies in the world, and he had to have the confidence to be invincible. This was the performance that an invincible expert should have. At this moment, Yi Xian had already condensed the invincible heart. He only treated the real body of Pangu as a training ground for himself, and he had the confidence to suppress the real body of Pangu. Yi Xian had the cultivation of the 4 tribulations of the way of heaven, mastered the space-time magic, and had an extremely strong physical body. He had mastered the immortality technique, and he also had the heaven-destroying halberd and the nirvana armor. There were no more than 5 people in the 3 realms who could match him. However, Yi Xian was not satisfied, because he still had one more thing to do, and this thing was more important than anything else. The power of time and space. Yes, the power of time and space. Although he had devoured the space-time magic of Dijiang and the Candle Dragon, this was not what Yi Xian really wanted. Because the magic was just a magic, it was not the power of time, and it could not allow him to travel between the future and the past. Yi Xian had never forgotten the person who reversed the river of time and came to this world. That was his future, and this meant that he could definitely control the power of time and go back to the past. However, Yi Xian knew one thing very well, and that was that there was no such thing as a free lunch. He had only devoured the space-time magic, but he did not control the power of time and space. This required him to cultivate and find a way to control the power of time and space. In the past, Yi Xian didn't have a clue, nor did he know anything about the power of time and space. But now, it was different. When he devoured the innate abilities of Dijiang and the Candle Dragon, it opened a path to the power of time and space for him. Although this path was extremely difficult to traverse, it was a path that Yi Xian had to take. He had already turned his time and space god arts into 2 seeds. He only needed to wait for these 2 seeds to germinate and give birth to a strand of space-time power. That was what he needed to do. Be it the Candle Dragon or Dijiang, the 2 of them could only control space-time superpower and could not cultivate it on their own. However, Yi Xian would not be like the 2 of them. He wanted to combine time and space and truly merge the 2 into one. For 1,000 years, Yi Xian kept fusing the 2 seeds. He wanted to fuse them into one and become a seed of space-time power. Unfortunately, Yi Xian still failed in the end. Time and space could not be merged. No matter what method Yi Xian used, it was useless. This was a difficult problem placed before Yi Xian, and he had to solve it himself. Only by combining time and space could he truly take the most important step. Epiphany. Yes, it was an epiphany. Yi Xian needed an epiphany to be able to combine time and space. However, this epiphany was not something that could be forced. Perhaps an incident or a battle would allow him to have an epiphany on how to combine time and space. Rumble. The Sumeru fairyland suddenly shattered. Yi Xian took a step out and disappeared. He wanted to find a place to study the space-time superpower in his body and turn them into a space-time seed. However, he did not know how long this would take. The three realms were peaceful and the world was peaceful. Since Yi Xian disappeared for 30,000 years, the three realms had become extremely harmonious under the rule of the Ziwei Tiandi. There were few disputes between the orthodoxies. However, there was one race that did not fall into this category. This race was the human race. Ever since Nuwa destroyed the human race's destiny, the human race in the four great continents of the Earth Immortal realm was embroiled in internal strife. If it wasn't a change of ruler and vassal, then it was an all-out war between nations. Even some human race cultivators were embroiled in all sorts of disasters. Although the concept of destiny was illusory, it was something that truly existed. Although the human race's hidden dangers did not cause any ripples in the three realms, they quietly spread to the other major powers. Whether it was the celestial court or the orthodoxies, wherever there were living beings, there would be humans. It was an indisputable fact that the human race was the main character of the world. The 33rd layer of the celestial court, the celestial emperor palace. Ziwei Tiandi sat high on the throne. Below him stood a group of immortals and demon kings. It was currently the morning court session. The Ziwei Tiandi was handling the affairs of the three realms. It had been 30,000 years since Ziwei Heaven and Earth became the celestial emperor. In these 30,000 years, he could be said to have managed the celestial court well. Everyone was sincerely convinced by him. No one dared to be disobedient to Ziwei Heaven and Earth like before. The Ziwei Tiandi's influence spread throughout the three realms. The 33rd layer of the celestial court was flourishing day by day. Your Majesty, Princess Yaoyue has secretly gone to the lower realms again. The celestial inspector strode out and reported to the Ziwei Tiandi with a bow. However, his face was slightly pale. It was clear that he had something else to say. Hearing the celestial inspector's report, the Ziwei Tiandi smiled and said, Yaoyue is a very active person. Since she wants to go down to the lower realms to play, then let her be. Yi Yaoyue was Yi Xian's adopted sister. How could the Ziwei Tiandi not dote on her? This was the little princess of the celestial court. How could the Ziwei Tiandi really blame her for going down to the lower realms to play? But, Princess Yaoyue? The celestial inspector stuttered, unable to continue. HM? Seeing the celestial inspector stuttering, the Ziwei Tiandi was startled. He said, What happened to Princess Yaoyue? Your Majesty, please forgive me. The celestial inspector fell to his knees and kowtowed to Crepe Myrtle, begging for forgiveness. Speak, what happened to Princess Yaoyue? The Ziwei was enraged. After 30,000 years, he already had the terrifying aura of a celestial emperor. Moreover, he was a heavenly Dao sage. His rebuke scared the celestial inspector quite a bit. Princess Yaoyue married a mortal man from the lower realms. They even gave birth to a pair of children. When I found out, I was already powerless. The celestial inspector trembled as he reported, his forehead touching the ground. He did not dare to look the Ziwei Tiandi in the eyes. What? The Ziwei Tiandi was stunned. He was stunned. The celestial court immortal kings were even more shocked. They could not believe their ears. A dignified princess of the heavenly court had actually gotten together with a mortal man and even gave birth to a son and daughter. This was simply the greatest joke in the world. If this was true, then wouldn't the 33 levels of the heavenly court be ridiculed by all the living beings in the three dimensions? How dare you slander Princess Yaoyue? Venus Taibai scolded coldly. He even summoned 2 heavenly generals and said, Push him out of the southern heavenly gate and behead him on the immortal execution stage. Your Majesty, please spare my life. How could this subject have the guts to slander Princess Yaoyue? What I said is the truth. The heaven-inspecting immortal official loudly begged. This caused the entire heavenly court to become so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. Let him go. Before the 2 heavenly generals could make a move, the heavenly emperor of Purple Myrtle said coldly. This caused the Heavenly Sentinel Immortal officer to hurriedly express his gratitude and quickly tell him everything about Yi Yaoyue. Chapter 985. Mortal Li Yuyun? The North Pole Celestial Emperor frowned and uttered the mortal's name. Your Majesty, this Li Yuyun is just a mortal scholar. I don't know why Princess Yaoyue is willing to give herself to him. They have already given birth to a son and a daughter. Your Majesty, please understand, the Celestial Inspector reported. At this moment, the entire Celestial Emperor Palace was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. No one dared to interrupt, because this was a huge scandal in the Celestial Court. If the Celestial Court's first princess married a mortal, the entire Celestial Court would become a laughingstock. If it were any other immortal, they would have just killed her. But Yi Yaoyue was Yi Tiandi's sworn sister. This matter was extremely thorny. However, immortals and mortals could not marry. This was an iron law since ancient times. This matter had always been criticized, and could not be allowed to happen in the Celestial Court. Your Majesty, why don't you let the old minister go and invite Princess Yaoyue back, and then we can make a decision later? Venus Taibai requested. All right, Venus, I'll leave this matter to you. Quickly bring Yaoyue back to the Celestial Court. She cannot be allowed to stay in the mortal realm, Ziwei Tiandi instructed solemnly. Old minister obeys. Venus Taibai accepted the order and left. He called out to the Celestial Inspector, and the two went down to the mortal realm. This matter cannot be publicized. If anyone spreads this matter to the outside world, I will punish them severely. Ziwei Tiandi said sternly, then waved his sleeves and left the emperor's throne. However, his eyes were filled with worry, and he was clearly not as calm as he appeared. After Ziwei Tiandi left, the immortal and demon kings of the Celestial Court also dispersed. However, this matter was not a small matter, and it caused them to discuss it in private. Dongsheng Divine Continent, Aolai. This was a small and peaceful village. At this moment, it was dusk, and every family was making a fire to cook. Strands of smoke rose from the kitchen, and children could be seen playing at the entrance of the village from time to time. Lotus Village was the name of this village, and it was only a mortal village. At the end of the village, there was a thatched hut. The courtyard was surrounded by a fence, and some fruits and vegetables were planted there. There was a young man and a young woman working together in the garden. Husband, you should return to your room and rest. I'll plant the remaining seeds. Yi Yaoyue was dressed in coarse sackcloth and her hair was tied into a bun. She held a hoe in her hand and was plowing the fields. She had a smile on her face as she spoke to the man beside her. Leave this kind of rough work to me. You should quickly return to your room and rest. Li Yuyun was dressed in a white sackcloth robe. He was about 20 years old, and he had sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes. He was scholarly and handsome. Although he could not be called a handsome man, he had a quiet and elegant feeling about him. Yi Yaoyue hurriedly pushed Li Yuyun back to the hut. Husband, you are a scholar. You should still prioritize the imperial examinations. Husband, quickly go back and study. Leave this rough work to me. You've suffered marrying me, Li Yuyun said with an ashamed expression. It's not bitter, it's really not bitter. How can you suffer when I can always be by your side? Yi Yaoyue muttered to herself. Father, mother, I'm hungry. A pair of children about 4 or 5 years old poked their heads out of the hut and pouted at the couple. Mother understands. I'll immediately start a fire to cook. Yi Yaoyue smiled at her children and comforted them. Wife, I, Li Yun, swear that when I pass the imperial examinations, I will definitely let you and your children live a life of luxury. Li Yuyun pointed to the sky and made a vow. He tightly held his wife in his arms. All right, quickly go and study. You? Believes that husband will definitely pass the imperial examinations. Yi Yaoyue softly said. Kacha. Suddenly, a muffled thunder came from the sky. However, there were no dark clouds in the surroundings. This caused Yi Yaoyue's expression to change. She raised her eyes to look at the sky. Wife, it looks like it's going to rain. Why don't we plant these seeds tomorrow? Li Yuyun was only a mortal. How could he know the source of the muffled thunder? He thought that it was going to rain heavily. Husband, return to your room first. Or just remember to send some mended clothes to Auntie Zhang. I'll be back soon. Without waiting for Li Yuyun to speak, Yi Yaoyue left the house. This caused Li Yuyun to sigh helplessly. He felt even more guilty towards Yi Yaoyue. As a scholar, he was really useless. He had to rely on his wife to take care of everything at home. Buzz. As soon as Yi Yaoyue left the house, she turned into a golden light and soared into the sky. Her entire person disappeared from Lotus Village. If this scene was seen by Li Yun, he would probably be extremely shocked. In the sky, Venus Taibai and the Sky Patrol Immortal official stood motionless. As the golden light shot over, Venus Taibai looked at Yi Yaoyue with a wry smile. Princess Yaoyue, what do you want the old minister to do? Venus Taibai sighed. Greetings, Venus. Yi Yaoyue bowed. Although her cultivation was that of the Daluo Jingxian and Venus Taibai was only an all-heaven golden immortal, Venus Taibai was an important minister of the celestial court. Naturally, she couldn't neglect the proper etiquette. The old minister doesn't dare to accept the princess's courtesy. You'd better quickly return to the celestial court with the old minister. Venus Taibai turned away and didn't mention that Yi Yaoyue had given birth to a pair of children with Immortal. Venus, I'm sorry. Yaoyue can't return to the celestial court with you. Yi Yaoyue's eyes drooped and her voice trembled slightly. This proved that she wasn't calm. Princess. Venus Taibai sighed and said, do you know that you have given birth to a pair of children with Immortal? This has already brought shame to the celestial court. As long as you return to the celestial court with the old minister, Ziwei Tiandi won't blame you. The celestial court will also do his best to suppress this matter. Venus, I know that I have brought shame to the celestial court, but Yaoyue can't leave her husband and 2 children behind. Please apologize to Brother Ziwei on my behalf. Tell him that Yaoyue has let them down. From now on, I'm no longer the princess of the celestial court, Yi Yaoyue said with tears in her eyes. Silly, you're silly. Venus Taibai sighed and said, Princess, oh princess, what do you want the old minister to do? What do you want Ziwei Tiandi to do? The celestial court has its own rules. If you break them, then others will follow suit. Won't the entire celestial court be in chaos? Princess, listen to the old minister's advice. It's still not too late to return to the celestial court with me. If you wait until the celestial court sends Daluo Jingxian to capture you, this matter will blow up. Even if Ziwei Tiandi wants to protect you, His Majesty can only enforce the law impartially. Venus Taibai advised earnestly, hoping that Yi Yaoyue would change her mind. Venus, Yaoyue knows that you have good intentions, but I already have a husband and children. I just want to spend the rest of my life with them. I'm sorry, but I can't promise you. Yi Yaoyue bowed to Venus Taibai. Chapter 986. Eldest Princess, you are a criminal. Why are you still so stubborn? The Sky Inspector Immortal suddenly rebuked. He had to bring Yi Yaoyue back to the celestial court today. Otherwise, how would he and Venus Taibai answer to Ziwei Tiandi? No matter what you say, I will not go back with you. Yi Yaoyue said resolutely. Venus, stand aside. Wait for me to capture the eldest princess. The Sky Inspector Immortal was at the first heavenly layer of Grand Heavenly Realm. Although his position in the celestial court was not as high as Venus Taibai's, his cultivation was solid and not something Venus Taibai could compare to. No! Venus Taibai hurriedly tried to stop him, but it was too late. The Sky Inspector Immortal burst out with grand heavenly golden light and suppressed Yi Yaoyue with a great art. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Naturally, Yi Yaoyue wouldn't just sit there and wait for her death. She didn't seem to have done anything, but with a flip of her hand, a golden rope shot out. It turned into a long streak of light that whizzed towards the heaven-inspecting Immortal. Not good, the Immortal binding rope. Taibai Jinxing exclaimed. What followed next was a tragedy for the heaven-inspecting Immortal official. The Immortal binding rope was an immortal supreme treasure. Even a Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal would have to surrender. The heaven-inspecting Immortal official was unable to resist at all and was suppressed by the Immortal binding rope on the spot. Not to mention a mere sky inspector immortal, even a peak grand heavenly realm cannot break free from the immortal binding rope. Yi Yaoyue said coldly. Sigh. Venus Taibai let out a long sigh. He knew that he would not be able to bring Yi Yaoyue back to the celestial court today. He bowed and said, Eldest princess, please release him. We will leave now. Yi Yaoyue had no intention of harming them, so she naturally wouldn't make things difficult for them. She recited a spell to retract the immortal binding rope, freeing the Sky Patrol immortal official. Jinxing, I'm sorry, Yi Yaoyue said apologetically. Eldest princess, even though you possess the immortal binding rope bestowed upon you by Yi Tiandi, and even a peak golden immortal can't do anything to you, you must know that you've already violated the rules of the heavens. Take care of yourself. Venus Taibai let out a long sigh, and then he called out to the Sky Patrol immortal official before returning to the celestial court. Yi Yaoyue didn't show any joy on her face as she watched Venus Taibai leave. Her brows were tightly knitted together because she knew that this matter wasn't over yet. However, there was nothing she could do. She could only take one step at a time. 33 layers of the celestial court. The North Pole Celestial Emperor sat on his throne with a heavy expression on his face. Below him, Taibai Jinxing and the heaven-inspecting immortal official were reporting to him about Yi Yaoyue. She's not coming back? Ziwei Tiandi asked with a frown. Your Majesty is wise. Your subject originally wanted to capture the eldest princess and bring her back to the celestial court. However, the eldest princess's immortal binding rope is extremely powerful. Your subject is no match for the eldest princess. The Sky Patrol immortal official kowtowed in shame. The rules of the celestial court cannot be broken for the eldest princess alone. Which subject is willing to bring the eldest princess back to the celestial court? Ziwei Tiandi asked as he looked around at the immortal demon kings. This? For a moment, the celestial court was silent. No one stepped forward to accept the order. Clearly, Yi Yaoyue's identity was too sensitive. If they really went to capture her, they would offend her. Although Yi Yaoyue was the Daluo Jinxian and possessed an immortal treasure like the immortal binding rope, the celestial court was filled with talents. There were even dozens of quasi-saints. Capturing Yi Yaoyue wasn't a problem at all. Unfortunately, everyone knew that Yi Yaoyue was Yi Xian's adopted sister. Although Yi Xian had passed the throne to Ziwei, the celestial court still respected Yi Xian. No one knew what Yi Xian's intentions were. Naturally, no one would recklessly step into these muddy waters. Where are the 28 mansions of the heavenly cycle? Ziwei Tiandi began to call out. Your subjects are here. The 28 mansions of the heavenly cycle quickly stepped forward and bowed to Ziwei Tiandi. Quickly go to the lower worlds and capture the eldest princess and bring her back to the celestial court. Remember, this must be done in secret. Do not let the outside world know, Ziwei Tiandi said solemnly. Yes, Your Majesty. The 28 mansions of the heavenly cycle obeyed and left. They even selected 10,000 celestial soldiers and generals and went to the Dongsheng Divine Continent. 7 days later, the 28 mansions of the heavenly cycle knelt in the celestial emperor palace with bruises all over their faces. Ziwei Tiandi smiled bitterly, her eyes filled with helplessness. It's not that our cultivations are inferior to the eldest princess. It's just that the eldest princess's treasures are too powerful. We are no match for the eldest princess. Please punish us, Your Majesty. The 28 mansions of the heavenly cycle knelt and begged for forgiveness, their faces filled with shame. One had to know that Yi Yaoyue's cultivation was not only at the Daluo Jinxian level, but she also had many treasures. These treasures were all bestowed by Yi Xian many years ago so that Yi Yaoyue would have the means to protect herself. Now, Yi Yaoyue did not use these treasures against outsiders. However, the generals of the celestial court had suffered greatly because of her treasures. Does anyone have a good plan? Celestial Emperor Ziwei heaved a long sigh. Let me go and bring Yaoyue back. Suddenly, a figure entered the celestial emperor palace. It was Mahamayuri Kongxian. With his arrival, the immortal and monster kings of the celestial court hurriedly bowed to him. Even Ziwei, the celestial emperor, rose to greet him. "Thank you for your hard work, Mahamayuri." Ziwei Tiandi nodded discreetly at Kong Xian. His lips moved slightly, clearly communicating with Kong Xian. In truth, Ziwei Tiandi really did not want to make things difficult for Yi Yaoyue. However, as the Celestial Emperor, he had to enforce the law impartially. If he ignored Yi Yaoyue's relationship with a mortal in the lower realm, how would the 33 layers of the Celestial Court manage the affairs of the Celestial Court? Although no one would say anything on the surface, if someone else violated the heavenly laws and used Yi Yaoyue as an example, wouldn't the laws of the Celestial Court be thrown into disarray? Therefore, Ziwei had to summon Yi Yaoyue back and give her some symbolic punishment. This was also a strategy to deceive everyone. Kong Xian naturally understood Ziwei's intentions. He nodded lightly and left the Celestial Emperor Palace, heading straight for the Dongxing Divine Continent. Lotus Village in the thatched hut. Li Yuyun was reading at the table. Yi Yaoyue was looking at her husband with her chin in her hands. However, her face was a little haggard. She seemed to be lost in thought. Li Yuyun put down his book and rubbed Yi Yaoyue's shoulders tenderly. "My wife, have you not rested well? Why do you look so haggard these days?" "My husband, if one day I leave you and our children, will you blame me?" Yi Yaoyue bit her lip, a touch of sadness on her face. "My wife, why are you speaking nonsense? No matter what happens, I, Li Yuyun, will always be here. I will never let you leave my side." Although Li Yuyun was a scholar, he was not pedantic. How could he not see that his wife had a lot on her mind? This made him pat his chest and promise Yi Yaoyue. "Mother, don't leave us." Her children pulled Yi Yaoyue's hand and shook it. This made Yi Yaoyue's gaze become extremely resolute. No matter what, she would never return to the Celestial Court, let alone abandon her husband and her children. "Be good, mother will definitely not leave you and father." Yi Yaoyue stroked her children's hair and comforted them. "Yaoyue, you are too muddle-headed." Suddenly, a cold voice came from outside the thatched hut. When Yi Yaoyue heard this familiar voice, her face turned pale. She immediately stood up and walked outside. Her voice trembled as she reminded Li Yun, "My husband, no matter what happens, you must not come out." Chapter 987. My wife. Looking at Yi Yaoyue's pale face, Li Yuyun was stunned. However, before he could ask what happened, the door of the thatched cottage was locked by Yi Yaoyue. In the outside world, Kong Xian stood with his hands behind his back. There was no terrifying aura around him. Instead, he looked toward the thatched cottage with a disappointed expression. "Brother Kong Xian." Yi Yaoyue's face was pale and bloodless. Her eyes were filled with sadness and despair. She knew that she was doomed when she saw Kong Xian arrive. Kong Xian was a figure at the peak of the sage-to-be. Even though she had many magic treasures in her hands, she could only surrender in the face of Mahamayuri. She had no power to resist. "Yaoyue, you are so muddle-headed. You have committed a grave mistake by privately marrying a mortal. How can you face Yi Tiandi and the entire Celestial Court?" Kong Xian said resentfully. "Brother Kong Xian, I?" Yi Yaoyue stuttered. She did not know what to say. "Let's go. Return to the Celestial Court with me. I will send people to take care of your children and this mortal secretly. This is the only thing I can do." Kong Xian said coldly. Brother Kong Xian, I'm sorry. I really can't go with you." Yi Yaoyue clenched her teeth and rejected Kong Xian's request. "Yaoyue, do you want to force me to fight?" Kong Xian was furious. The five-colored divine light faintly overflowed. Even the sky and earth changed color. "Brother Kong Xian, I know I am no match for you. However, if you want me to abandon my husband and children, forgive Yaoyue for not being able to comply. Even if I die in your hands today, Yaoyue will have no regrets." Clang, clang, clang. A autumn water celestial sword appeared in Yi Yaoyue's hand. She pointed the sword at Kong Xian with an expression that said she would rather die than submit. This made Kong Xian's face turn gloomy. His eyes were filled with disappointment. "Yaoyue, then don't blame me for not remembering our old relationship. I have no choice but to capture you back to the Celestial Court." Kong Xian suddenly attacked. The five-colored divine light rippled out. Yi Yaoyue took out her celestial sword and turned it into a sky full of sword radiance that slashed toward Kong Xian. Clang, clang, clang. Kong Xian was so terrifying that he was no match for Yi Yaoyue. The sword radiance in the sky was shattered. A ray of the five-colored divine light bombarded Yi Yaoyue's chest. The rays and felt. Wife! Mother! Suddenly, the door of the straw hut was slammed open. Li Yuyun was glaring at Kong Xian furiously. He even stumbled over to Yaoyue and hugged her. Their son and daughter were crying and shaking Yi Yaoyue's arms, calling for their mother. Why did you hurt my wife? Li Yuyun was extremely angry. His face was flushed red as he scolded Kong Xian. Hubby, he's my big brother? Yi Yaoyue's face was pale. She grabbed Li Yuyun's hand tightly and said weakly, "What? He's your big brother." Hearing the words of his wife in his arms, Li Yuyun was completely stunned. He had never heard Yi Yaoyue mention her big brother before. Why was there an additional big brother now? Why did he hurt you? Li Yuyun asked in a daze. You're just a mere mortal. What right do you have to marry Yaoyue? Kong Xian looked at Li Yuyun with murderous eyes. He had already decided to kill this mortal. Perhaps this was the only way to make Yi Yaoyue give up. Big brother Kong Xian, don't. Yi Yaoyue quickly shielded Li Yuyun behind her. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth as she begged Kong Xian with a sorrowful expression. This made Kong Xian's expression change. The murderous intent that had just risen in his heart disappeared without a trace. An extremely helpless look flashed across his eyes. Don't you dare bully father and mother. The two children cried out and glared at Kong Xian angrily. This scene made Kong Xian's expression change. He said, "Yaoyue, come back with me. You know you can't resist me." Big brother Kong Xian, do you really want me to kill myself in front of you? Suddenly, Yi Yaoyue picked up the autumn water immortal sword and placed it directly between her eyebrows. Clearly, this sword would destroy her soul and scatter her soul. Yaoyue, are you crazy? You're actually threatening me with death for a mortal? This scene made Kong Xian's expression change drastically. He loudly rebuked Yi Yaoyue. He didn't expect Yi Yaoyue to do such a foolish thing. Big brother Kong Xian, I beg you. I will definitely not go back with you. Please grant Yaoyue my wish. If big brother really wants to force me to leave my husband and children, then I can only die in front of you. Yi Yaoyue's voice trembled slightly. Her eyes were filled with the will to die. You? Kong Xian trembled and was speechless. His body and mind were trembling. How could he bear to watch Yi Yaoyue die in front of him? Good. Kong Xian said 3 times. Then he looked angrily at Li Yun and said, "You lowly mortal, you've caused my little sister to suffer so much. Although I won't kill you today, and I won't take her away, you should know that you're not worthy of Yaoyue. I hope you can take care of yourself." Kong Xian suddenly turned and left. He couldn't force Yi Yaoyue to her death. He absolutely couldn't allow such a tragedy to happen. Stop right there. Suddenly, before Kong Xian could take a few steps, Li Yuyun calmly spoke and walked toward Kong Xian. This made Kong Xian look coldly at this mortal. I, Li Yun, don't care who you are. But I want to tell you that I'm Yaoyue's husband, the child's father, and an indomitable man. If you want to hurt Yaoyue in the future, you'll have to step over my dead body, Li Yuyun angrily rebuked. With just you. Kong Xian sneered and said, "You talk big, but unfortunately, you're just a mortal. If I wanted to kill you, I wouldn't even have to lift a finger. If it weren't for Yaoyue, you'd have died thousands of times already. Remember, if you want to become Yaoyue's husband, you have to have the strength and status to match her. Otherwise, empty talk will only make you a laughingstock." Kong Xian flung his sleeves and strode away. "I'll remember what you said. I'll definitely pass the exam and become a man above all others," Li Yuyun roared at Kong Xian. But to Kong Xian, it was an extremely laughable thing. "Husband, come back." Yi Yaoyue whispered miserably. She knew she'd avoided a disaster today, but what would she do in the future? Although the 3 realms were vast, how could she avoid the pursuit of the Celestial Court? The 33rd layer of the Celestial Court, the Celestial Emperor Palace. The immortals were speechless. The Yao kings were silent. Ziwei Tiandi sat on the emperor's throne, his brows tightly knitted together. Below him was Kong Xian, who had returned to the celestial court. After all, I watched Yao Yue grow up. I can't bear to see her die in front of me. Kong Xian was slightly ashamed. He'd originally said that he'd bring Yi Yao Yue back, but in the end he'd failed. Ziwei Tiandi sighed and comforted him. There's no need to worry, wise king. If it were me, I'd do the same. In an instant, the atmosphere in the Celestial Emperor Palace became somewhat stifling. Even Kong Xian had returned without success. Who else could bring Yi Yao Yue back to the Celestial Court? Chapter 988. Do you have any good ideas? Ziwei Tiandi asked in a low voice. Unfortunately, the immortals and demon kings were all speechless. Even Kong Xian had failed, so what could they do? In fact, this matter was not difficult to handle. Any pre-saint could capture Yi Yao Yue, but Yi Yao Yue's identity was too sensitive. If they really forced her to die, how could they face Yi Xian? They could not beat her, nor could they kill her. They also had to smoothly bring Yi Yao Yue back to the celestial court. This matter was too tricky. In terms of cultivation, Kong Xian was a peak pre-saint. In terms of persuasion, Venus Taibai was the best. But both of them had failed. Who else could accomplish this? Your Majesty, as the saying goes, whoever tied the bell must untie it. Only Yi Tiandi can manage this matter. Just as everyone was silent, Brilliance with Star stepped forward and directly pointed out the crux of the matter. No. Suddenly, Dong Huang Tai strode in from outside the hall and directly refuted this decision. With Dong Huang Tai's arrival, everyone stood up and bowed. Your Majesty, Yi Tiandi meditates in the great Tao of heaven and earth. He has long ignored the affairs of the three realms. If we trouble him over such a trivial matter, won't it mean that we are too useless? Dong Huang Tai said in a low voice. As Dong Huang Tai finished speaking, many demon kings nodded in agreement. Dong Huang, you mean? Ziwei Tiandi wanted to say something but stopped. I have the bell of chaos. I can suppress Yao Yue in an instant. I will personally descend to the mortal world and bring her back to the celestial court, Dong Huang Tai said. No. Suddenly, Kong Xian waved his hand and interrupted. Yao Yue has a strong temperament. If anything happens to her, won't we see a tragedy? Well. Dong Huang Tai frowned, hesitation in his eyes. Kong Xian is right. Yao Yue has many magic treasures, but she can't fight back against a pre-saint. This matter has nothing to do with cultivation. We need her to sincerely return to the celestial court, Ziwei Tiandi said with a frown. It was obvious that Kong Xian didn't bring Yi Yao Yue back. Even though the Eastern Emperor Tai had the bell of primal chaos in his hands and forcefully suppressed Yi Yao Yue, if something really happened, they wouldn't be able to explain it to Yi Xian. My king, Star King Wood Brilliance was right. Kong Xian said to Crepe Myrtle seriously. It is difficult for an honest official to resolve a family dispute. Only God Yi Tiandi can resolve this. That's exactly what I was thinking. The North Pole Celestial Emperor nodded slowly, but his expression was slightly troubled. It's just that Celestial Emperor Yi has been gone for 30,000 years. We have no idea where he is, so how can we tell him about this? Perhaps we don't know where Celestial Emperor Yi is, but there is one person who definitely knows. Kong Xian smiled with a confident look. Who? Ziwei Tiandi asked in surprise. Huang Tianjun? Kong Xian said the person's name. Yi Yao Yue married a mortal and gave birth to a son and a daughter? In the Celestial Emperor Palace. Fatso Huang frowned deeply. Kong Xian and Ziwei Tiandi looked at him expectantly. The immortal and monster kings on both sides looked Fatso Huang up and down, puzzled. This person was only Dao Yuo Jingxian. How did he know Yi Tiandi's whereabouts? Huang Tianjun, only Celestial Emperor Yi can resolve this matter. Although we don't want to alarm Celestial Emperor Yu, there is nothing we can do now, Celestial Emperor Ziwei said in a low voice. Brother Huang, we can only rely on you now, Kong Xian said solemnly. All right, I understand. Fatso Huang nodded lightly, then strode out of the Celestial Emperor Palace. Ziwei Tiandi and Kong Xian looked at each other, the heaviness in their eyes fading slightly. Fatso Huang left the celestial court and rode his golden cloud down to the lower realm. Clearly, in the vast 33rd layer of the celestial court, only he knew where Yi Xian was and only he could contact Yi Xian. Earth Immortal Realm, Broken Mountain. The sky was vast, the ground was vast, and the mountains were continuous. An enormous peak that pierced the sky towered into the clouds, numerous 3 kilometers tall ancient pine trees rose from the ground, and luxuriant flowers and plants stretched out endlessly, causing this place to seem like a paradise. In a valley, a straw hut, a clear pond, and a green bamboo forest swayed in the wind. When a breeze blew, the bamboo leaves rustled. It was a peaceful and tranquil place. Beside the clear pond, a person sat cross-legged. He wore black clothes and his hair was silver-white like snow. It fluttered slightly in the breeze, and it gave others a peerlessly beautiful and unreal feeling. Heaven and earth are reversed, the sun and moon hang upside down, time and space become one, and the myriad of techniques are infinite. The world froze and everything fell silent. Strands of mysterious ripples blossomed around this person, causing the world to become extremely viscous. Ripples rippled out incessantly, causing the surrounding scenery to faintly distort. The sound of a mirror shattering resounded. The distorted space suddenly returned to normal, and a long sigh came from this person. It's been 30,000 years, a full 30,000 years. Why have I still failed? Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes, and a wisp of desolate and lonely aura rippled out. A long sigh came from his mouth, and there was deep unwillingness in his words. 30,000 years. A full 30,000 years. When Yi Xian devoured the space-time divine ability of the 2 ancestral lands, he lived in seclusion on Broken Mountain for 30,000 years. He wanted to combine his space-time divine ability and space-time divine ability and turn them into a real space-time seed. Unfortunately, after 30,000 years, Yi Xian did not know how many methods he used, but in the end, it all ended in failure. He could not achieve what he wanted at all. 30,000 years might not be a long time for a saint, and even the time Daluo Jingxian spent cultivating in seclusion was not very long. However, to Yi Xian, 30,000 years was too long, and it was enough for him to take a step further. However, he had wasted 30,000 years and was unable to combine his space-time divine ability and space-time divine ability. This was simply unacceptable to him. However, he had to accept it even if he did not want to. It should be known that cultivating a space-time seed was something that surpassed the great Tao of heaven and earth. It was simply impossible for Yi Xian to succeed in just 30,000 years. Suddenly, a series of footsteps came from outside the bamboo forest. This also made Yi Xian feel something. He looked at the person who came, and it was Fatso Huang who rushed over from the celestial court. "What happened that made you come here to find me?" Yi Xian whispered softly. "Sir, something happened." Fatso Huang quickly walked to Yi Xian. He first bowed to Yi Xian, then quickly told him everything about Yi Yaoyue. The union of a celestial and a mortal, and Yaoyue gave birth to a child? Yi Xian muttered to himself, then shook his head helplessly. He did not expect such a thing to happen, and it even disturbed his current cultivation. In the past, Yang Jian split a mountain to save his mother, and even the Jade Emperor's daughter married a mortal. I did not expect such a thing to happen to me. Yi Xian murmured bleakly. "Sir, Yaoyue is your sworn sister. The immortals of the celestial court are helpless. Now, only you can restrain her." Fatso Huang sighed. "Fine, since the space-time powers cannot be combined, I will go see Yaoyue and see what kind of husband she has found for herself." Yi Xian nodded faintly. He stood up from the side of the clear pond and disappeared with one step. Fatso Huang hurriedly followed Yi Xian. Chapter 989. Dongsheng Divine Continent, Ao Lai, Lotus Village. Li Yuyun and his wife were sitting opposite each other in the courtyard surrounded by a fence. "Husband, let's move out," Yi Yaoyue said with a worried face. "Wife, who is that big brother of yours? Why do we have to move out? What happened?" Although Li Yuyun was a scholar, he was not pedantic. Instead, he was a very intelligent person. From Yi Yaoyue's abnormal behavior and the arrival of Kong Xian, it was clear that Yi Yaoyue's identity was not simple. I. Yi Yaoyue was speechless. She did not know how to explain her identity to Li Yun. She was even more afraid that if she revealed her identity, Li Yuyun would be shocked and unable to accept it. Husband, don't ask. You only need to know that my family is very powerful. They will not allow us to be together. For our future, let's leave this place, Yi Yaoyue said sadly. Wife, regardless of whether your family agrees or not, I will definitely prove to them that I, Li Yuyun, can definitely give you happiness. Let me face them. Li Yuyun said in a powerful voice. Yi Yaoyue said anxiously, Husband, you don't understand. They are not as simple as you think. They are the heavens. Little sister. Suddenly, a soft voice came from outside the courtyard. When this voice sounded, Yi Yaoyue felt a loud bang in her head. Her face instantly turned pale and she could not continue speaking. Big brother? Yi Yaoyue turned around with great difficulty. Her face was extremely pale and her eyes were filled with despair. There was also a trace of fear. Who are you? Li Yuyun looked in the direction of the voice and saw that two people had appeared outside the house. The person in the lead was dressed in black. His hair was as white as snow and he gave off a feeling of elegance. The other person was obese. Judging from his posture, he was the servant of this black-clothed youth. Li Yuyun frowned. He knew that trouble was coming. Little sister, it seems like this is the husband you found for yourself? Yi Xian slowly walked into the fenced courtyard. He didn't have the slightest bit of anger on his face. Instead, he displayed a calm and collected attitude. Big brother. Yi Yaoyue's body and mind trembled. She knelt on the ground. She did not expect that her sworn brother would come here personally. If Yi Yaoyue cared about the most in this world, other than her husband and child, then it would be Yi Xian in front of her. She felt reverence for Yi Xian. My wife he is. Li Yuyun frowned. He had never seen Yi Yaoyue like this. Even when his wife threatened to kill herself last time, she was now kneeling in fear before this person. Yuyun kneeled down. He is my big brother. Yi Yaoyue kept tugging on Li Yuyun's sleeve as her voice trembled. Big brother? Li Yuyun said in a daze. However, he did not kneel to Yi Xian. Clearly, Li Yuyun was an unyielding man. Other than kneeling to the heavens, the earth, and his parents, who else could make him kneel? Yuyun greets big brother. Li Yuyun bowed 3 times. He was neither servile nor overbearing. Yuyun! Yi Yaoyue's expression changed drastically. She knew Yi Xian's temperament. This big brother of hers was one of the most imposing people in the world. He did not even care about heavenly path sages. At this moment, her husband was just a mere mortal. If he angered her big brother, what should she do? Unyielding and unyielding. Your heart is higher than the heavens. Good, very good. Yi Xian smiled. He did not mind Li Yuyun's etiquette. Instead, he personally helped Yi Yaoyue up from the ground. Big brother, Yi Xian's arrival made Yi Yaoyue's face filled with sorrow. Her eyes were filled with great anxiety. She was afraid that Yi Xian would take her back to the celestial court. From then on, she would never see her husband and child again. There's no need to say anything more. I'm just here to see what kind of husband you've found for yourself, Yi Xian said indifferently. Now you see. Li Yuyun said in a low voice. Clearly, Kong Xian's arrival had left him with a bad impression. Now that Yi Xian had appeared, he was naturally filled with great enmity. Although you are a scholar among mortals, you are indeed an outstanding mortal. However, if you want to be worthy of my little sister, you are indeed not qualified. Yi Xian's indifferent words made Yi Yaoyue's face turn pale. Li Yuyun's face was filled with great anger. He was about to refute Yi Xian. Unfortunately, before Li Yuyun could speak, Yi Xian smiled and said, however, love is a matter of mutual consent. Since my little sister is willing to marry you and give birth to a pair of children for you, there is no need to talk about whether you are worthy or not. Li Yuyun was originally angry, but now he was at a loss. He looked at Yi Xian with a stunned and speechless expression. He didn't know what Yi Xian wanted to do. Big brother? Yi Yaoyue's eyes were filled with confusion. Her entire person was in a mess. Yi Yaoyue had already lost all hope. She thought that Yi Xian would bring her back to the celestial court, but now it seemed that this big brother of hers had no intention of doing so. As the saying goes, an elder brother is like a father. Why didn't you inform me of such an important matter like your marriage? Yi Xian sighed softly. Big brother, I'm sorry. Yi Yaoyue said guiltily. A sliver of mist appeared in her eyes. Scenes of her interactions with Yi Xian in the past flashed through her mind. Husband, apart from you and the children, Big Brother is my only family in this world. Without Big Brother's care, Yaoyue would have been buried in the earth long ago. It would be even more impossible for me to have feelings for you, Yi Yaoyue said solemnly to Li Yun. Hearing his wife's words, Li Yun immediately became guilty. He hurriedly bowed to Yi Xian and said, Big Brother, Yaoyue was being unreasonable. Please don't blame me. Thank you for taking care of Yaoyue all these years. Yaoyue kowtows to you. As Li Yun spoke, he was about to kneel and kowtow to Yi Xian, but Yi Xian did not let him kneel. Instead, he helped him up and said, We're all family. There's no need for such formalities. Qing'e, Liner, come and greet your uncle. Yi Yaoyue wiped away the mist in her eyes. She hurriedly called her children over, and the two children came to their mother's side. They looked at Yi Xian curiously. Quick, call him uncle, Yi Yaoyue constantly urged her children. Hello, uncle. The two children greeted Yi Xian with crisp voices. This made Yi Xian's eyes become dazed. He never thought that he would become an uncle. Afterwards, a smile appeared on his face. 2 golden pills had appeared in his hand at some point, and he handed them to the two children. I came in a hurry, so I didn't prepare anything. These 2 pills can strengthen the bones and tendons. Take it as a token of my kindness, Yi Xian said softly. Chapter 990. Why aren't you thanking uncle? Yi Yaoyue was startled. She hurriedly instructed her children to take the pill. Yi Yaoyue knew very well that the pill her elder brother had taken out was definitely a treasure of the world. How could it really be a pill to strengthen one's muscles and bones? Thank you, uncle. The two children bowed to Yi Xian again. They were very polite and courteous. This made Yi Xian smile and nod. He looked at the two children with a slightly gratified expression. Wife, let's not stand here and talk. Why aren't you welcoming elder brother into the house? Li Yun was full of smiles. He cordially invited Yi Xian into the house for a chat. As for the two children, they displayed an extremely affectionate attitude towards Yi Xian. They directly arrived in front of Yi Xian, shook his arm, and continuously called out for their uncle as they walked home. Yi Xian was full of smiles as he followed the two children into the straw hut. From time to time, he would laugh and tease the two children. This scene stunned Fatso Huang on the spot. Yi Yaoyue was also extremely shocked. However, the two of them quickly came to their senses and hurriedly entered the straw hut together. However, Yi Yaoyue's eyes were filled with a heavy look that could not be erased. Although Yi Xian was her elder brother, Yi Yaoyue understood Yi Xian's temperament very well. This big brother of his was a supreme figure in the world, a figure who dominated the world, a figure who suppressed an era. He was decisive in killing. All living things submitted to him. All living things feared him. Her elder brother was a ferocious person. Would he really let her family go for this so-called kinship? Yi Yaoyue did not dare to imagine it. However, she was powerless to change anything. She only hoped that her elder brother would be merciful and let her, husband, and children live together peacefully. She did not dare to have any extravagant demands from Yi Xian. The straw hut was not big. There were only 2 narrow rooms. One was for the husband and wife, and the other was for the 2 children. Even the dining area only had a square wooden table. The entire straw hut was slightly crowded. However, it was unusually clean and tidy by the husband and wife. The few side dishes were mostly vegetarian. They were personally cooked by Yi Yaoyue. Li Yun took out a pot of turbid wine and personally poured a cup for Yi Xian. At the square table, Yi Xian sat down. Li Yun sat across from him. Yi Yaoyue and Fatso Huang stood behind the two of them. They had no intention of taking a seat. Fatso Huang was Yi Xian's subordinate, and Yi Yaoyue was Li Youyun's wife. In terms of etiquette, the two of them were not allowed to take a seat. Since we're all family, let's cut the formalities. Quickly, sit down. Yi Xian called out to the two of them. This made Fatso Huang give a flattering smile. He did not refuse and directly sat beside Yi Xian. Yi Yaoyue hesitated for a moment before finally sitting down. He's Fatso Huang. Although he's my subordinate, the two of us are actually brothers. You can call him Brother Huang in the future, Yi Xian said with a smile. Little brother Li Youyun greets Brother Huang. Li Youyun cupped his hands and bowed. Then he personally filled Fatso Huang's cup with wine. I wouldn't dare, Fatso Huang said with a smile. This little sister is ashamed. Let me toast to brother. Yi Yaoyue raised the cup with both hands and solemnly bowed to Yi Xian. Then she tilted her head back and drank the wine in the cup. Sigh. Yi Xian sighed softly and also drank the wine in the cup. Mother, I also want to toast to uncle. Father, I want one too. During the banquet, the two children tugged at the corners of their parents' clothes. Their faces were red as they pleaded with the couple. Don't be rude. How can you drink wine at such a young age? Quickly go back to your room and memorize your books. Li Yun was a scholar and was especially particular about etiquette. He hurriedly reprimanded his children. It's fine. Yi Xian smiled and called out to the two children, Come to uncle. Uncle. The two children made faces at Li Youyun and directly went to Yi Xian's side. This also made Yi Xian put the two children on his knees with a smile. Brother, the children are still young. They can't drink wine, Li Yun suddenly said anxiously. Husband, it's rare for brother to be so happy. It's fine to let the children drink a cup today. Besides, this wine isn't intoxicating. Yi Yaoyue hurriedly pulled Li Youyun. Clearly, she was afraid that Li Youyun would anger Yi Xian. All right, but the two of you are only allowed to drink one cup. Do you hear me? Li Youyun said to the two children with the authority of a father. Thank you, father. The two children giggled. Come. Uncle will drink with you. Yi Xian personally poured 2 cups of wine and drank the wine while the two children giggled. Strangely enough, after drinking the wine, the two children's faces didn't have any color. They didn't show any signs of drunkenness. Instead, they kept talking to Yi Xian as if the wine didn't affect the two children at all. With the union of an immortal and a mortal, these two children were naturally not ordinary. They could be considered half immortal, so how could mere wine affect them? From time to time, the laughter of the two children could be heard from the small straw hut. They kept calling out, Uncle. Li Youyun kept exchanging cups with Yi Xian and chatting about everything under the sun. This made the family banquet harmonious and happy. However, Yi Yaoyue continued to pour wine for her husband and Yi Xian. She didn't interrupt the conversation at all. Clearly, she wasn't calm at all. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 dishes, Li Youyun's face was flushed red. His eyes were blurred. It was obvious that he was drunk. After all, he drank half a jar of wine. Moreover, he was only a mortal. Brother, you're Yaoyue's closest person. Yu Yun is truly happy that you've come to visit us today. You have to stay for a few more days to show how much we love you. Although Li Youyun was slightly drunk, when he chatted with Yi Xian, he was completely in awe of Yi Xian's knowledge. He even treated him as a close friend. All right, that's exactly what I was thinking. Then I'll have to trouble you, Yi Xian nodded with a smile. At this moment, hearing that Yi Xian would be staying for a few days, Yi Yaoyue's feelings were complicated. She was slightly worried. She only hoped that this brother of hers was really only here to visit her and not to take her back to the celestial court. Brother, Yu Yun is drunk. I'll send him back to his room to rest. I'll have to trouble you to rest here for the night, Yi Yaoyue said softly. All right, go ahead, Yi Xian nodded slowly. Yi Yaoyue hurriedly helped Li Youyun to another room. The two children had fallen asleep in Yi Xian's arms. The sky outside had already darkened. Sir, why don't you let Yaoyue stay? Fatso Huang stood up and bowed to Yi Xian. He seemed to be unable to bear it. Clearly, Fatso Huang could not bear to break up this family of 4 after what he had seen today. Since when have you become so benevolent? Yi Xian smiled and teased Fatso Huang. Fatty Huang bitterly smiled and said, Mister, things have already happened. Yao Yue is your adopted sister after all. Although giving birth to a pair of children with Immortal is a great mistake, with Mister's current cultivation, do you really care about such trivial matters? Chapter 991. Trivial Matters? Yi Xian muttered to himself in shock. Then he smiled knowingly and said, This is indeed a trivial matter to me, but it is a disgrace to the celestial court. The two are inextricably linked. I am also considering what to do. Are you going to kill them? Fatso Huang's expression was uncertain. He had followed Yi Xian for the longest time and understood Yi Xian's temperament the best. Today, there seemed to be laughter and a joyous atmosphere, but Fatso Huang knew that in the next moment, this family of 4 would die without a burial ground. Yi Xian could completely sense Fatso Huang's nervousness. This made him smile and say, A man cannot stand tall without his word. In the past, I promised Yao Yue's grandfather that I would take good care of her for the rest of her life. This is also why I took her in as my adopted sister. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Fatso Huang sighed inwardly. It seemed that his master did not have the intention to kill them. This made him relax slightly. However, I am a little curious. You have followed me for many years and have always acted viciously and mercilessly. You have never let off the old, the weak, the women, or the children. Why have you suddenly become compassionate today? Yi Xian was a person who never trusted others, but if there was someone he trusted, it would definitely be Fatso Huang. Yi Xian also regarded Fatso Huang as his trusted aide, so he naturally valued Fatso Huang. Fatso Huang smiled bitterly and sighed softly, Sir, I spend all my time in the celestial court. I watched Yao Yue grow up. How can the tens of thousands of years of feelings disappear just like that? Hearing Fatso Huang's words, Yi Xian was slightly taken aback. Then he shook his head self-deprecatingly and said, It seems that the word love really is harmful. Even you are not exempt from it. However, you are right. When people stay together for a long time, they will inevitably develop feelings for each other. It is a pity that Yao Yue and I rarely spend time together. In fact, we do not have much feelings for each other. This also makes her respect me to the extreme, so it is inevitable that we are somewhat distant. Sir, I have something to say, but I do not know if I should say it. Fatso Huang hesitated and finally could not help but speak. Yi Xian smiled and said, Is there anything that cannot be said between you and me? Sir, please forgive me. Fatso Huang first bowed and then said in a low voice, In the past, Linger's family of 3 died in front of Sir. This is Sir's pain in the past. This subordinate really does not wish for the matter of the past to repeat itself. As Fatso Huang's words fell, Yi Xian's expression changed. A murderous aura suddenly flowed out of his body. Clearly, Fatso Huang's words had disturbed the calm lake in his heart. Fatso Huang, you are becoming more and more presumptuous, Yi Xian said coldly in a low voice. Fatso Huang knelt and kowtowed to Yi Xian. His expression was extremely solemn as he said, Sir, this subordinate just does not wish to see you repeat the mistakes of the past. I do not wish to see this family of 4 being separated. Whether it is the reputation of the celestial court or trivial matters, with your current status, who would dare to say anything? Sir, you once told me that if I want to gain the respect of others, then I have to become stronger. The so-called external objects and reputation are just empty words. Only by becoming stronger can others revere and look up to you. I understand. You are pleading for Yao Yue? Yi Xian frowned slightly. Sir, if you order me to kill this family of 4 right now, Fatso Huang will definitely not show any mercy. However, I really do not wish to see the matter of the past repeat itself. After Linger's death, this subordinate saw you grieving alone every day. This subordinate really does not wish for you to experience this again, Fatso Huang said sorrowfully. Get up. Yi Xian slowly helped Fatso Huang up. He became silent and a self-deprecating smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Fatso Huang, I was the one who created the celestial court. Yao Yue is also my adopted sister. With such a scandal, I have to give the celestial court an explanation. How about this? I'll make a bet with you. As long as Li Yun can pass my test, I'll help his family of 4. This can be considered as you pleading for them. What do you think? Sir, how do you want to bet? Fatso Huang asked with a trembling voice. In the boundless secular world, there are many emotions and desires. If Li Yun can overcome the desires of a mortal, then this bet will be considered your win. However, if he falls into the desires of the secular world, then I can only harden my heart and kill them. Even Yao Yue has no need to live, Yi Xian said softly. But Li Yun is only a mortal. How can he? Fatso Huang frowned and spoke hesitantly. Fatso Huang was once immortal. He understood the complexity of the human heart all too well. Although Li Yun was unyielding, how could he resist the surging desires of the secular world? So this is a bet. I'm giving them a chance because of you. It's up to you whether you want to bet or not, Yi Xian said with a faint smile. All right, this subordinate will bet with Sir this once, Fatso Huang said with a trembling voice. Looking at Fatso Huang's solemn expression, Yi Xian smiled knowingly. In truth, there were some things that he did not tell Fatso Huang. It was only because he was in a hurry that he decided to make this bet. Actually, from the beginning to the end, Yi Xian had never thought of killing this family of 4. Just as Fatty Huang had said earlier, with his current cultivation and status, no one in the world would dare to disobey him. Why would he care about the gazes of others? Although he did not have a deep relationship with Yi Yao Yue was still his adopted sister. Yi Xian had even promised Yao Yue's grandfather to take care of her. But the most important reason was that Ling Er's death was one of the regrets of his life. He had been forced by the situation to lead to the tragedy of the past. The current Yi Xian was no longer the Yi Xian of the past. Yi Yao Yue was also no longer the Ling Er of the past. She had only found someone she liked, even if the other party was only immortal. The so-called immortal and mortal could not be united was nothing more than a joke in Yi Xian's eyes. He had never really cared about this matter. However, Fatso Huang did not know Yi Xian's thoughts. Instead, he thought that Yi Xian wanted to kill this family of 4. This was why he had pleaded for mercy for them. In the vast world, only he was the most powerful. Yi Xian wanted to be free and unfettered. Even the heavenly Tao could not restrict him. When had he ever really cared about his so-called reputation and the opinions of others? In fact, after saying so much, Yi Xian's true thoughts were not on this matter. Instead, he had other thoughts. This was because he was very interested in Li Yun. The so-called test actually had another purpose. This matter was related to Yi Xian's future cultivation and also related to one of his great enemies. However, Yi Xian was not sure if Li Yun could pass his test. Another digression. Yi Xian's path seemed to be ruthless, but his ruthlessness was built on those who stood in his way. Anyone who stood in his way was mercilessly killed by Yi Xian without exception. Chapter 992. In the human world, Yi Xian had left his mother and sister for the sake of his own cultivation. He had personally killed his childhood sweetheart, Xia Qingzhu, because he did not want his relationship to affect his cultivation. He had even killed the fairy of Moonfrost to overcome the second tribulation of the heavenly way. However, the union between Yi Yao Yue and Li Yun did not affect him at all. Yi Xian was not a killing machine, so what reason did he have to kill this family of 4 for no reason? Could it be that Yi Xian had a hobby of killing his own family? Or was he just a pervert? Yi Xian was a person, a living person. Although he had abandoned many things on the path of cultivation, including his family and love, he was not an animal without intelligence. That was all. The lone moon hung high in the sky. The night was hazy, and the stars dotted the night sky. Strands of moonlight poured down, illuminating the entire courtyard. In the courtyard, Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back. Yi Yao Yue knelt in front of him. Her face was rather pale, and her heart was filled with anxiety and unease. Brother, I know I was wrong. I only ask that you show mercy and let Yu Yun and the child go. Yao Yue is willing to return to the celestial court with you, Yao Yue said with a trembling voice. Yao Yue, are you very afraid of me? Yi Xian helped her up as a trace of self-mockery appeared on his face. I don't dare, but you need to give the celestial court an explanation. I also know that I've shamed the celestial court and you, so I'm willing to bear all the consequences. I only ask that you don't take your anger out on Yu Yun and the child, Yao Yue said in a choked voice. When a person stood at the peak, all that was left was loneliness. Whether it was the so-called family or friends, they would gradually drift away and look up to this person. Now, Yi Xian truly understood what it meant to be lonely at the top, because he could see the nervousness and reverence in Yao Yue's eyes. She no longer had the admiration she had for him as a child. Heaven and earth are vast, and the four seas are vast. From the celestial court to the underworld, there is no need for me to account to anyone in the three realms of heaven, earth, and man. Yi Xian smiled faintly. Big brother, you? Yao Yue was already prepared to leave with Yi Xian, but when she heard Yi Xian's words, she froze on the spot. Since Li Yuyun is the husband you chose, he is also my brother-in-law. The two children also call me uncle. It doesn't matter if he is a mortal or an immortal, this is an indisputable fact. However, I really want to know if he is qualified to be your husband, so I will stay here and take a good look. Yi Xian said with a smile. Thank you, big brother, for helping me. The sudden surprise made Yao Yue choke with sobs. She really didn't expect Yi Xian to help her. This made her eyes overflow with tears of excitement. Her heart was filled with gratitude towards Yi Xian. You and I are siblings, why do you need to thank me? Yi Xian said softly. Time passed day by day. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. In this half a year, Yi Xian and Fatso Huang had completely settled down in Lotus Village. They even built a thatched cottage and lived next door to the family of four. Rural life was peaceful and comfortable. It could be said that it was a good place to cultivate one's mind. In this half a year, Li Yuyun and Yi Xian became more familiar with each other. Almost every day, Li Yuyun would personally visit Yi Xian and chat with him. He even called him Big Brother. The two children shuttled between the two thatched cottages every day. From time to time, they could hear bursts of laughter. Yao Yue was still a little worried. However, after half a year, no one from the celestial court came. Yi Xian also didn't have any intention of bringing her back to the celestial court. This gradually made Yao Yue feel relieved. Finally, a long-lost smile appeared on her face. However, Fatso Huang was still worried. This was because he had never forgotten his bet with Yi Xian. However, after half a year, Yi Xian still hadn't made the slightest move. However, in this half a year, the two children recognized Fatso Huang as their adoptive father. This made Fatso Huang dote on the two children even more when he was worried. It could be said that this made him feel both pain and joy. Li Yuyun was indeed a scholar. He came to visit Yi Xian almost every day. He was just short of staying at Yi Xian's place every day. He simply regarded Yi Xian as a celestial being. He even forgot about his wife and children. Li Yuyun couldn't be blamed. After all, Yi Xian had cultivated for almost 200,000 years. Whether it was medical divination, astrology, astronomy, or geography, it could be said that he knew everything. If Li Yuyun had any questions, Yi Xian would be able to answer them. This was simply unimaginable for Li Yuyun. He completely regarded Yi Xian as his teacher. On this day, half a year later, in the thatched cottage. Elder brother, in 3 days, Yuyun will enter the capital to take the exam. When Yuyun returns from the imperial examination, I will definitely not forget elder brother's kindness in teaching me for half a year. Li Yuyun bowed 3 times to Yi Xian and said, Yuyun's talent is not shallow. He will definitely be able to pass the imperial examination. It just so happens that elder brother has nothing to do. Why don't I accompany a worthy younger brother to the capital? Yi Xian said with a faint smile. Husband, aren't we living very well right now? The so-called scholarly honor is just a false reputation. Why don't we? Yao Yue was slightly tactful. Clearly, she didn't want Li Yuyun to enter the capital to take the exam. Li Yuyun sighed and said, My wife, you are wrong. Although we scholars have no strength, we have a passionate heart to serve our country. Otherwise, if I, Li Yuyun, didn't do anything after reading the books of the sages for so many years, wouldn't I have failed the teachings of the sages in the books? This? Yi Yao Yu didn't know what to say. She knew that Li Yuyun had always wanted to be in the imperial examination, and even more, he wanted to bring happiness to the people. This was also his greatest wish. If she tried to stop him now, it would only make him unhappy. If it was before, Yi Yao Yue would naturally support him. But now, her elder brother was here. Why would he care about the so-called scholarly honor of mortals? Yuyun is right. A man should aspire to travel far. It is time for Yuyun's ambitions to be realized. Elder brother supports you. Yi Xian smiled. Elder brother understands me. Li Yuyun laughed heartily. She truly viewed Yi Xian as her lifelong confidant, and even viewed him as a teacher and a friend. Although Yi Yaoyue was unwilling and felt that something was wrong, even Yi Xian agreed. She didn't dare to object. Like this, the matter was settled. Fatso Huang helplessly shook his head. He knew that the bet between him and Yi Xian was about to truly begin. 3 days later, just as dawn broke, a carriage stopped outside Lotus Village. Under the gazes of Yi Yao Yu and the 2 children, Yi Xian's group of 3 also boarded the carriage. Amidst the billowing dust, the carriage gradually disappeared into the distance. Husband, you have to come back safely. Yi Yaoyue bit her lips. There was a deep sorrow in her eyes. Chapter 993. Dongxing Divine Continent, Aolai. Aolai was a large country in the Dongxing Divine Continent. It could be said that it was a place blessed by outstanding people. Its capital was the center of Aolai. High officials, nobles, and nobles were not few in number in the capital. If a commoner wanted to join the ranks of these nobles, the only way was to pass the imperial examination. Therefore, the imperial examination became the only way for commoners to advance. They studied hard for 10 years in order to stand out in the imperial examination and be placed in an important position by the imperial court. Capital. More than a year had passed since Yi Xian accompanied Li Yuyun to the capital. Just the journey from Lotus Village to the capital took them half a year. The mountains were high and the rivers were long, evil people ran amok, and there were even cases of demons eating people. Li Yuyun experienced too many unimaginable hardships along the way. Robbers, demons, heavy rain, and all kinds of natural and man-made disasters accompanied Li Yun. He even caught a cold on the way to the capital and almost died. Commoners were extremely bitter. Students from all over the country gathered in the capital for the imperial examination. Students from wealthy families were better off as they could afford to hire guards to protect them. They also had a guarantee of basic necessities. However, if they encountered demons and ghosts, they could only sigh at their own bad luck. Commoners were even worse. They lacked food and clothing on the long journey. They could fall sick and be killed by robbers. They had to go through many difficulties to reach the capital. Therefore, the first test of the imperial examination was the journey to the capital. Countless commoners died along the way. Li Yuyun had never traveled far before. This half a year of travel almost took his life. It really made him understand what was called suffering in the world. Fortunately, every time Li Yuyun almost died, he was lucky enough to survive. Of course, this was all thanks to Yi Xian and Fatso Huang. After half a year of traveling, Li Yuyun no longer had the ambition he had when he first left Lotus Village. He was like a frosted eggplant, wilting. His body was weak, his body was thin, and his face was pale. It was as if a gust of wind could blow Li Yuyun to the ground. Lai Fu Inn was very famous in the capital because it only received students coming to the capital for the imperial examination. It could also be said that it was a gathering place for scholars. The reason why the Lai Fu Inn was so famous was that it was completely free of charge. It provided free food and lodging for students from all over the country, and also allowed students from all over the country to have a place to stay in the capital. Inside the inn, Yi Xian and the other 2 were eating. There were some simple steamed buns, vegetables, and a bowl of porridge. Big brother Yi, big brother Huang, we have to eat more. The Lai Fu Inn doesn't provide dinner. Li Yuyun finished the porridge in one gulp. Not even a drop of rice was left. Yuyun, the imperial examination is in half a month. Your body is too weak. You have to eat more to have the strength to study. Yi Xian sighed softly and handed a steamed bun to Li Yun. Big brother, you can't. You only had a bowl of porridge yesterday. You must have been hungry for a long time. Yuyun can't eat this steamed bun. Li Yuyun flatly refused. It's fine. Your big brother has practiced some martial arts before. It's fine even if I don't eat for 3 to 5 days. But your body is too weak. If you don't eat, how can you have the strength to study? Don't you want to pass the imperial examination and enter the imperial examination? Yi Xian reprimanded. Big brother, Li Yuyun's eyes were red and his nose was a little sour. If it wasn't for Yi Xian taking care of him in every possible way, he might have already died on the road. He still clearly remembered that a group of bandits blocked the road. It was Yi Xian and Fatso Huang who forced them to retreat. He also suffered many knife wounds. He remembered all of this in his heart. Yun, I'm not hungry either. Hurry and eat these 2 steamed buns. Fatso Huang sighed softly and also handed the steamed bun in front of him to Li Yun. All right, you're a man. Why are you being so shy? If I tell you to eat, just eat. When you become the imperial examination, you can pay me back 10 times or 100 times. Yi Xian smiled faintly. Big brother, I'll eat. Li Yuyun ate the steamed bun with tears in his eyes. Yi Xian and Fatso Huang also finished the porridge in their bowls. In reality, this porridge was only a bowl of water with rice in it. How could it really fill their stomachs? Of course, Yi Xian and Fatso Huang didn't need to eat. All of this was just for Li Yuyun to see. The Lai Fu Inn only provided 1 meal a day. Yi Xian and the other 2 had traveled for half a year to reach the capital. They had already used up all of their traveling expenses, which was why they were in such dire straits. Of course, it wasn't just Li Yuyun. The other poor students were also in a similar situation. If it wasn't for the Lai Fu Inn, these poor students would really be in dire straits. Poor students had it hard, but scholars had it even harder. Passing the imperial examination was their only way out. Big brothers, wait for me here. Yun will be back soon. Looking at the pitiful rice in Yi Xian and Fatso Huang's bowls, Li Yuyun's heart was extremely desolate. He seemed to have made some sort of decision. Gritting his teeth, he left the square table. No one knew what he was going to do. Teacher, Li Yuyun has experienced a year of suffering in the world. His arrogance has been polished. Why don't we just let it go? Fatso Huang probed. Greed, anger, infatuation, resentment, love, separation, desire. This is only the beginning. Let us continue watching, Yi Xian said with a faint smile. In a side room of the inn, Li Yuyun's face was sometimes red and sometimes pale, as if he was going through a choice in his heart. But in the end, he gritted his teeth, picked up the bag containing the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone, and walked out of the room. Then he quickly left the inn. Teacher, where is he going? In the air, Fatso Huang asked in surprise. Let's follow him and see, Yi Xian said with a faint smile. Xing Wang Temple. The Xing Wang Temple was an extremely lively and bustling area of the capital. From the royal palace to the common people, there was an endless stream of people coming to the Xing Wang Temple every day. Burning incense, praying and praying. On both sides of the street, there were peddlers peddling their wares. One could even see fortune-tellers and storytellers talking with assurance. Lively voices rose and fell one after another. Li Yuyun sat in front of a square table with a red face. A banner was erected beside him. On it were 2 large words, selling paintings. Clearly, Li Yuyun could not bear to see Yi Xian and Fatso Huang live on a diet for him. He came to the Xing Wang Temple to sell some of his paintings for some money. It was a disgrace to the refined, and associated with the stench of money. It had to be known that in Ao Lai, the scholars all boasted of being virtuous. If they appeared in public and sold their paintings for a living, they would be looked down upon by the other scholars. This was also why there were so many poor scholars in the Lai Fu Inn. They would rather eat the free food of the Lai Fu Inn once a day than take their paintings out to sell. This kid is very considerate. Fatso Huang slightly glanced to the side. There was a hint of praise in his eyes. The suffering of mortals is the suffering of life. He can understand the difficulties of life, but this is only the beginning. Yi Xian said softly. Time passed little by little. Although it was very lively in front of the Xing Wang temple, Li Yuyun did not have an easy time. After a full hour, he had not sold a single painting. Chapter 994. The other vendors were all shouting their wares, and the passers-by knew what they were selling. But Li Yuyun was just sitting there. Who would know that he made a living by selling paintings? Also, Li Yuyun was just a poor scholar. Why would anyone ask about his paintings? Hey, are you a scholar? Suddenly, an old woman wearing hemp clothes came to Li Yuyun. She looked at Li Yuyun with confusion. Li Yuyun's face was slightly red, but he quickly stood up and bowed. I am indeed a scholar. Auntie, do you want to buy a painting? I am illiterate. If I buy your paintings, I can't eat or wear them. What would I buy them for? The old woman in hemp clothes smiled. Then you are? Li Yuyun was startled. My son is far away at the border fighting a war. He sent someone to send a letter back, but this old woman is illiterate. I want to ask you to read it for me. It would be best if you could send a letter back to my son. Only then did the old woman reveal her purpose. I see. Li Yuyun nodded slowly. His eyes were filled with disappointment. But he was kind and said, Where is the letter? I will read it for you. Thank you so much. The old woman smiled gratefully. She quickly took out the letter and handed it to Li Yuyun. Li Yuyun opened the letter and read it to the old woman. This made the old woman cry. She kept thinking about her son who was far away at the border. Auntie, I have finished writing the letter. You just need to send someone to deliver it to your son. Li Yuyun handed the letter to the old woman. The old woman was so grateful that she kept bowing to Li Yuyun. Child, Annie doesn't have any money to thank you. Here are 2 meat buns that were just given to me by a rich family. You must accept them. As the old woman spoke, she took out 2 paper buns from the bamboo basket she was carrying. The aroma of meat buns filled the air. Without waiting for Li Yuyun to refuse, she stuffed the buns into Li Yuyun's hands. Then, she quickly walked away from Li Yuyun's stall. This? Looking at the 2 meat buns in his hands, Li Yuyun was speechless. His eyes were filled with gratification and self-mockery. He was gratified that he was able to use his own 2 hands to exchange for food, but he was self-deprecating that a dignified scholar like himself had fallen into such a situation. Gulp. The aroma of the meat buns woke Li Yuyun up. He swallowed his saliva and carefully put the 2 meat buns into his bag. Obviously, he was really hungry, but he knew that Yi Xian and Fatso Huang were hungrier than him. These 2 meat buns were also left for Yi Xian and Fatso Huang. Wait a little longer, wait a little longer. Someone will definitely buy my calligraphy and paintings. Once I get the money, my 2 brothers and I won't have to suffer so much. It was the beginning of spring and the weather was still a little cold. Li Yuyun's body was already weak. He hugged his arms and shivered in the cold wind. His lips were already a little pale, but he still insisted on waiting for the next customer. Sir, Seeing this scene, Fatso Huang's eyes were filled with pity. But before he could finish, Yi Xian lightly shook his head and said, Have you done what I asked you to do? Yes, but... Fatso Huang couldn't bear it and couldn't continue. No buts. Don't forget our bet. Yi Xian coldly said, Yes, sir. Fatso Huang reluctantly agreed. He could only pray for Li Yuyun in his heart. In front of the city god temple, Li Yuyun was shivering in the cold. He kept rubbing his hands to warm himself up, but the thin clothes on his body didn't allow him to feel any warmth at all. Hey, are you a scholar? Suddenly, a voice sounded in front of Li Yuyun's stall. 3 young masters were looking at Li Yuyun with a puzzled expression. I am a scholar. Do you want to buy some calligraphy and paintings? Seeing that there were customers, Li Yuyun quickly cupped his hands and bowed to the 3 people. Humph, you are a disgrace to the educated. Since you are a scholar, why do you have to associate with stinky money? You are really ruining the reputation of us scholars. One of the young men coldly scolded. He was wearing a brocade robe. At a glance, one could tell that he was either rich or noble. At this moment, he looked at Li Yuyun with eyes full of disgust and contempt. Being scolded by this person with disdain, Li Yuyun's face turned red. He also felt humiliated, but he still cupped his hands and bowed. "Brother, you don't know. I have studied hard for 10 years just to pass the imperial examination. But the journey to the capital is long. I have already used up all my traveling expenses. Big brother and second brother have been living frugally for me and have been hungry for several days. As a scholar, I won't bend my waist for stinky money. But I can't bear to see big brother and second brother starve, so I came up with this plan. I want to sell some calligraphy and paintings to get some money to feed my 2 brothers. Is what you said true?" Suddenly, another youth with delicate features opened his mouth and asked. "Every word is true. Heaven and earth can bear witness." Li Yuyun cupped his hands and bowed. "What a joke. A disgrace to the educated is a disgrace to the educated. No matter how much you say, it can't change the fact that you are a disgrace to the educated." The young man in the brocade robe sneered. Then he turned to look at the young man and said, "Young Master Xian, we should leave this kind of person who associates with stinky money. Otherwise, wouldn't it dirty our eyes?" Unfortunately, the young man didn't respond to this person's suggestion. Instead, he smiled at Li Yuyun and said, "I wonder if brother can let me see your calligraphy and painting?" Originally, Li Yuyun was ashamed and angry. But not only did the young man not leave, he also wanted to see his calligraphy and painting. So, Li Yuyun could only hand a calligraphy and painting to the young man. The young man slowly pushed Li Yuyun's calligraphy and painting away. In just 3 short breaths, the young man's eyes lit up and he said, "Good," 3 times. The brush moves like dragons and snakes. The painting style is unique. What a splendid mountain river painting. The young man was full of praise. His face was full of love. One had to know that he was born with a noble background. He had seen many famous works. Although Li Yuyun's calligraphy and painting couldn't be compared to those famous works, there was a kind of pure and refined artistic conception contained in the calligraphy and painting. If there was an expert to guide Li Yuyun's future achievements would be limitless. "Brother, how much do you want for this splendid mountain river painting?" The young man took the calligraphy and painting in his hand and looked at Li Yuyun with a face full of appreciation. 10 taels of silver. Li Yuyun's face was flushed red. "What? 10 taels of silver?" The young man was stunned. Five taels is also fine. I really can't go any lower," Li Yuyun said with a flushed face. He thought the young man thought the price was too high and this was his final bottom line. Looking at Li Yuyun's flushed face, the young man suddenly realized. He hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "Brother, you misunderstood. Brother's masterpiece is worth 10,000 taels of silver. A mere 10 taels of silver is simply an insult to brother. If brother trusts me, I'll bring this calligraphy and painting back first. Wait for me here tomorrow. I'll definitely send someone to deliver 10,000 taels of silver," the young man said solemnly. Obviously, this young man was born with a noble background. This time, he didn't bring a single copper coin. However, he loved Li Yuyun's calligraphy and painting so much that he didn't want to let it go. "Brother, take the calligraphy and painting. 10,000 taels of silver is too much for me. You only need to deliver 10 taels of silver tomorrow." For his calligraphy and painting to be valued by a fellow scholar, this was a great affirmation for Li Yuyun. He offered the calligraphy and painting with both hands, then picked up his luggage and left the Xing Wang temple. This person is so strange. Isn't he afraid that I'll cheat him? The young man was in a daze. He didn't think that Li Yuyun would trust him so much and give him the calligraphy and painting. Chapter 995. Elder brother, I've returned. Li Yuyun returned to the Laifu Inn with a flushed face. When he saw Yi Xian and Fatso Huang, he hurriedly handed the 2 meat buns in his bag to them. "Yun, where did you get the money to buy food?" Yi Xian pretended to be confused. "Elder brothers, please listen to me carefully." Very soon, Li Yuyun told them about what had happened today. Yi Xian and Fatso Huang naturally knew what had happened, but they still sighed emotionally. Sigh. A worthy younger brother is a scholar, but he showed himself in public for the two of us. This really makes us feel ashamed, Yi Xian said with some self-blame. Brother, please eat the food quickly. If it weren't for the two of you taking care of me along the way, I'm afraid that Yu Yun would have already died of illness along the way. I will never forget the kindness that you've shown me, Li Yun said sincerely. Yun, do you think that young master who promised you 10,000 taels of silver really isn't a swindler? Fatso Huang asked meaningfully. No, this young man is a righteous person. He should come from a famous family. As a scholar, he wouldn't lie to me, Li Yun said with certainty. Alright, let's not talk about this. I have something to give you today. The two of you should take our leave, Yi Xian said softly. What is it? Li Yun was surprised when he heard that Yi Xian and Fatso Huang were about to leave. He hurriedly asked anxiously, Where are you going? Are you not going to accompany Yun? All good things must come to an end. It's time for us to leave. If fate wills it, perhaps we'll meet again. As Yi Xian spoke, he took out a scripture from his bosom and handed it to Li Yun, saying, This scripture isn't some sage's book, it's just a method of maintaining one's health. Your body is weak to begin with. If you can comprehend this method of maintaining one's health, it won't be difficult to prolong your life in the future. Li Yun took the scripture in a daze. He flipped to the first page in a daze and murmured to himself. Boundless secular world technique? That's right. This scripture is called the Boundless Secular World Technique. There are 9 great realms of health in it. If you can comprehend the first level, that will be the day we meet again, Yi Xian said with a smile. Don't worry, elder brother. Yu Yun will definitely study it well. I will definitely live up to elder brother's expectations. Li Yun solemnly put away the Boundless Secular World Technique. At this moment, Fatso Huang's eyelids suddenly twitched. A look of surprise flashed across his eyes. He never thought that Yi Xian would actually let Li Yun comprehend the Boundless Secular World Technique. The Boundless Secular World Technique was something that belonged to Luo Ho. This technique was on par with the Immortal scripture. Back then, Yi Xian and Luo Ho had exchanged scriptures. Fatso Huang had witnessed it with his own eyes. Logically speaking, this kind of precious scripture should be comprehended by Yi Xian himself. But why did he pass the Boundless Secular World Technique to Li Yun today? He couldn't figure it out, and he couldn't understand it. A huge question grew in Fatso Huang's heart. The Boundless Secular World, 9 disasters descend. Yun, you have to take care of yourself. Yi Xian strolled out of the Laifu Inn. But before he left, his words were unfathomable. Fatso Huang quickly followed Yi Xian. Only Li Yun held the scripture in a daze and didn't say anything. By the time he came back to his senses, Yi Xian and Fatso Huang had already disappeared. The Boundless Secular World, 9 disasters descend? Li Yun muttered to himself. His eyes were filled with confusion. It was obvious that he couldn't understand the meaning of this sentence. In the void, there was no shadow and no form. Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the void. Fatso Huang stood beside him. It was just a mirror image of heaven and earth in front of the two. Li Yun's every move was also observed by the two. Sir, why did you? You want to ask why I passed on the Boundless Secular World Technique to him? Yi Xian said with a slight smile. He, Fatso Huang said with a flattering smile, Sir's intentions are naturally not something that I can guess. The boundless secular world bewitches the eyes and disturbs the eyes. When will it stop? Luo Ho's boundless secular world technique came from the fate of the human tribe. He also gave me an incomplete technique. But he forgot that the most suitable person to practice the secular world technique is the mortal who is immersed in the world of mortals. I've studied this technique for tens of thousands of years and have come to a final conclusion. This technique only focuses on artistic conception and not cultivation. If one can pass through the 9 disasters of the secular world, one can become the saint of all saints and control the legendary power of karma. Li Yun is awe-inspiring and has a body of iron. He knows how to be grateful and has a kind heart. If such a pure person enters the boundless secular world, he can pass through the first disaster of the secular world if he is not confused by all kinds of desires. Lu Jie said tirelessly. Are you going to take him as your disciple? Fatso Huang was shocked and looked at Yi Xian with great astonishment. Yi Xian shook his head. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Li Yuyun in the mirror image of heaven and earth. He murmured, if he can pass through the first disaster of the secular world, he will be of great use to me. Whether I can take the crucial step all depends on him. Yi Xian paused for a moment and then continued in a low voice. But if he can't pass through the first disaster of the secular world, he can only die in my hands because I will not allow a good-for-nothing to become Yao Yue's husband. And Yi Yao Yue will be imprisoned in the celestial prison forever because of him. This? Fatso Huang was shocked and sucked in a breath of cold air. He didn't expect Yi Xian to give Li Yuyun such a difficult problem. Sir, the boundless secular world technique is on par with your immortal scripture. They can be called the two most powerful techniques in the world. Li Yuyun is just immortal. How can he pass through the first disaster of the secular world? Whether he can pass through it or not depends on himself. I think Luo Ho should have already passed through it, right? Yi Xian's eyes were deep, as if he could see through the boundless void and see a person struggling in the secular world, but transcending it. Sir, why are you doing this? Fatso Huang couldn't understand Yi Xian's actions. Even if Li Yuyun passed through the first disaster of the secular world, what good would it do for Yi Xian? Unfortunately, Yi Xian didn't answer Fatso Huang's question because this was his biggest secret and also related to something extremely important to him. The space-time seed. That's right, the space-time seed. Yi Xian cultivated for 30,000 years in order to fuse the space-time divine ability and the space-time divine ability into a space-time divine ability seed. Unfortunately, 30,000 years of hard work was useless. These two powers were clearly separated and couldn't be fused. However, during these 30,000 years, Yi Xian didn't come out empty-handed. He finally found a way to fuse the two powers. The power of karma. Yes, the power of karma. The power of karma was a power that transcended heaven and earth. It was also the most mysterious power. Time and space were of the same origin. They couldn't be fused together because they lacked an opportunity. This opportunity was the power of karma. Only the power of karma could reconcile these two powers. To make a simple analogy, water and fire couldn't coexist. However, as long as there was a vessel carrying water and a flame burning under the vessel, the water would boil. Similarly, the power of spacetime was the same. The two couldn't coexist. Therefore, a vessel was needed to reconcile these two powers and completely fuse the power of spacetime into one. This vessel and opportunity was none other than the power of karma. As long as Li Yuyun could pass through the first disaster of the secular world, a trace of the power of karma would be born in his body. This was exactly what Yi Xian needed. Chapter 996. Moreover, this was only one of Yi Xian's goals. There was another goal that was related to Luo Ho, but he would not go into detail here. However, Li Yuyun carried Yi Xian's hope. If he couldn't pass through the first calamity of the mortal world, then he wouldn't have any value at all. Yi Xian wouldn't hesitate to kill someone who didn't have any value. In fact, Yi Xian seemed to be neither fast nor slow, but he was more anxious than anyone else. This was because his cultivation was already at the peak of the 4 tribulations of the heavenly Tao, and he was about to pass the 5 tribulations of the heavenly Tao. Yi Xian had a premonition that the 5 tribulations of the heavenly Tao were extremely terrifying. If he did not have the help of the power of time and space, he would probably fall between heaven and earth. The 9 tribulations of the heavenly Tao were fatal. Each tribulation was a life or death tribulation. A single misstep would cause one's soul to scatter and die. Yi Xian had a deep understanding of the terror of the 9 tribulations of the heavenly Tao. Li Yuyun, you are someone I value. If you disappoint me, not only will you lose your wife and child, you will also die without a burial ground. Yi Xian looked at Li Yuyun in the mirror image of heaven and earth, his voice cold and heavy. Lai Fuin. Li Yuyun was concentrating on studying the scripture with the help of the boundless secular world technique. However, this scripture was too obscure and difficult to understand. Even though Li Yun had read the 4 books and 5 classics, he only had a smattering of the contents. The boundless secular world, life and death, reincarnation in a single thought? Li Yun was puzzled and puzzled. These mysterious scriptures gave him a headache. He had been trying to understand them for half a day, but he still had no clue. In fact, Li Yun did not know that the boundless secular world technique was not something that could be comprehended. It required one to experience many desires in the secular world before one could truly step into the threshold of this technique. At this moment, he had not even touched the surface. Perhaps only by experiencing the boundless secular world could he understand the profound meaning described in this scripture. Who's Li Yun? Suddenly, he heard a clamor coming from the Lai Fu Inn. Li Yun was startled. He was just a student who came to the capital to take the exam. Who would know his name? May I know who is looking for me? Li Yun put away the boundless secular world technique and strode out of the room. He saw the 3 youths from yesterday appear in the lobby of the inn. You really are here. When the handsome young man saw Li Yun, his face lit up with joy. Li Yun then remembered his appointment with the young man at the city god's temple yesterday. Brother, please forgive me. I was too engrossed in my studies and forgot about our agreement. Li Yun quickly walked in front of the young man and cupped his hands in a salute with an apologetic look on his face. If it wasn't for your signature on the painting, I would have guessed that you were at Lai Fu Inn. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to find you. The young man smiled. Here, this is 10,000 taels of silver. I specially came to give it to you today. The young man directly took out a silver note. Indeed, there were 10,000 taels of silver written on it. However, this also made Li Yun stunned. He hurriedly refused and said, Brother, don't joke around. How can a mere painting be worth 10,000 taels of silver? Just give me 10 taels of silver. If I say it's worth 10,000 taels of silver, then it's worth 10,000 taels of silver. Brother, don't be modest. Quickly accept the silver note. The young man said seriously, Brother, I appreciate your kindness. However, I can't accept this silver note. I only want 10 taels of silver. Li Yun directly refused the silver note with a resolute and decisive look. The young man who looked like a manservant suddenly became angry and said, Hey, my master, cough. The handsome young man hurriedly coughed lightly. Suddenly, the manservant paused and said, My master said 10,000 taels of silver. Then it's 10,000 taels of silver. Why don't you take the money? Brother, I appreciate your kindness. However, too much money is useless to me. I only need 10 taels of silver. If I can pass the imperial examination, I will return the 10 taels of silver. This painting will be my gift to you. Li Yun said seriously. The young man in the brocade robe said with a cold and disdainful face, You're just a poor scholar. You still deliberately mystify and treat money like dirt. Do you really think you can pass the imperial examination? Brother, yesterday you repeatedly spoke ill of me. I, Li Yun, don't think I have offended you. Don't go too far. As the saying goes, even a person made of clay has 3 points of anger, let alone Li Yun. This made him reprimand the young man in the brocade robe coldly. How dare you? Being reprimanded by a poor scholar like Li Yun made the young man in the brocade robe angry. One had to know that his father was the prime minister. No one dared to speak to him like this. Lin Feiyun, don't go too far. Suddenly, the handsome young man frowned and said, Xianxianyu? Good. Lin Feiyun was so angry that he sneered again and again. He glared at Li Yun and also hated Li Yun in his heart. Since you don't want the 10,000 taels of silver, I, Li Xianxian, want to be friends with you. Xiaowan, give me 10 taels of silver. Li Xianxian ordered the manservant next to her. The manservant also quickly took out 10 taels of silver and handed it to Li Xianxian. Brother, I'll lend you these 10 taels of silver. When you pass the imperial examination, you must return it to me. Li Xianxian smiled and said, Of course. Li Yun laughed heartily. Waiter, prepare a banquet. Today, I want to drink with Brother Yun until we're drunk. Li Xianxian casually threw out an ingot of silver, causing all the scholars in the inn to raise their eyebrows. Under Li Xianxian's warm invitation, Li Yuyun could not refuse. They exchanged cups and talked about everything under the sun. Lin Feiyun kept drinking and occasionally looked at Li Yuyun with cold eyes. Li Xianxian and Li Yuyun regretted not meeting each other earlier. They both admired each other's knowledge. I didn't expect Brother Yuyun to be so knowledgeable. I'm afraid that Brother Yuyun will definitely win the imperial examination today. Li Xianxian said, slightly drunk. 10 years of hard work, just for the imperial examination today. If Yuyun can pass the imperial examination, he will definitely benefit the people. Li Yuyun said powerfully. Good, good, good. Li Xianxian clapped her hands and cheered. She raised her cup and said, This cup of wine is for Brother Yun. I'm waiting for you to pass the imperial examination. The two drank the wine in their cups. The manservant next to Li Xianxian looked at the sky outside. He lowered his voice and said to Li Xianxian, Young master, it's already late. Master is still waiting for you at home. Let's quickly go back. Li Xianxian nodded. Although she was reluctant to leave, she knew that she had to go. Today, I felt like old friends at first sight. In the future, I will ask for your advice. Li Xianxian cupped her hands and bowed. She called out to Lin Feiyun and the manservant and left the inn. Li Xianxian and the other two's behavior of coming and going as they pleased didn't bother Li Yuyun too much. However, he did admire Li Xianxian's knowledge. He was also very pleased to have made such a friend in the capital. However, Li Yuyun didn't know that he had already angered Lin Feiyun today. Lin Feiyun was the son of the prime minister and an influential figure in the capital. This brought him great humiliation and caused his simple nature to change greatly. It also caused a series of events to occur later. Of course, everything that happened to Li Yuyun was within Yi Xian's control. The appearance of these three was also Yi Xian's doing. Chapter 997. Time passed quickly and there were only 7 days left before the imperial exam. During this period of time, Li Xianxian went to see Li Yuyun almost every day. This made the two of them quickly call each other brothers and their relationship became even better. The 4 books and 5 classics, astronomy and geography, the two of them talked about everything and regretted not having met earlier. However, the closer Li Xianxian got to Li Yuyun, the more unfriendly Lin Feiyun looked at Li Yuyun. However, he did not dare to do anything to Li Yuyun. After all, he could not afford to offend Li Xianxian. However, Lin Feiyun already had a grudge against Li Yuyun and set up a dead end. He only needed to wait for Li Yuyun to step into the trap. In the Laifu Inn. Brother Yun, tomorrow is the imperial exam. I believe that you will definitely be the top scorer. At that time, we will meet in the throne room. Li Xianxian raised his wine cup and drank it in one gulp. A worthy younger brother's auspicious words. You and I will be the top scorer together. At that time, we can also visit the common people. Li Yuyun said loudly and also drank his wine. On the day of the imperial exam, the entire capital became extremely lively. A large number of students rushed to the scholar pavilion because the examination hall was located there. In the examination hall, Li Yuyun sat upright. Although he was slightly nervous, he was still full of confidence. He believed that with his knowledge, he would definitely be the top scorer. However, Li Yuyun was slightly regretful that he did not see Li Xianxian in the examination hall. Presumably, she should be in another examination hall. Answer the questions first. Ding-ling-ling. The examiner rang the golden bell and the door of the examination hall slowly closed. A set of examination questions were given to each student. This also meant that the imperial exam had officially begun. The world is ruled by literature and the country can be pacified by martial arts. If Confucianism uses literature to create chaos and martial arts to break the law, is there a good solution? Li Yuyun looked at the question in front of him and smiled slightly. This question was too easy for him. He immediately ground an ink stick and picked up a brush to write. Time passed bit by bit. As the golden bell rang again, the examiners collected the papers one by one, and the first round of the imperial examination ended. However, the imperial examination would last for 3 consecutive days. During these 3 days, The students were not allowed to leave the examination hall. Everyone had their own private residence. After the 3 days of examination, they could leave the scholar pavilion. Of course, if there were students who gave up, they could leave first. However, this would also mean that they would fall behind and have no chance to pursue an official career. The first day of the exam ended just like that. What Li Yuyun didn't know was that his exam paper wasn't placed with the other students, but was placed in front of someone else, in a separate room in the scholar pavilion. Lord Zhang, what do you think of Li Yuyun's results? Lin Feiyun casually passed the test paper in his hand to the person beside him. This person was wearing a second-rank official's robe. He was actually the Grand Secretary who was in charge of the imperial examination, Zhang Chunshan. Good. What a good rule the country by law. When Zhang Chunshan finished reading Li Yuyun's test paper in one breath, he said the word good 3 times. His face was extremely excited. What? Did this person really answer the questions very well? Lin Feiyun said with a gloomy face. Unfortunately, Grand Secretary Zhang Chunshan didn't notice Lin Feiyun's expression at all. Instead, he praised with great emotion, "It's not just good. It's simply a great talent in ruling the world." If the saints saw this essay, they would definitely place him in a great position. Suddenly, Lin Feiyun actually snatched the test paper from Zhang Chuanshan's hand. Then, with a gloomy face, he tore the test paper in half. "Young Master Lin, why are you doing this?" Grand Secretary Zhang Chunshan asked in shock. "Lord Zhang, I remember that when you first entered the capital, it was my father who cultivated you vigorously. That's why you are a second-rank official today, right?" Lin Feiyun said lightly. That's right. Prime Minister Lin's kindness. I will never forget it." Zhang Chunshan hurriedly made a fist salute, as if he vaguely understood Lin Feiyun's thoughts. "This Li Yuyun has offended me. He can forget about becoming an official in this lifetime. Do you know what to do?" Lin Feiyun said gloomily. "I understand. But if people find out, I'm afraid I—" Zhang Chunshan wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. "You can rest assured. In the capital, other than His Majesty, my father is the most powerful. You can do whatever you want. I don't want to see this Li Yuyun again. Do things to the extreme. You must have a way. Of course. As long as you do this for me, I will personally go see my father. The position of Minister of Revenue will be yours." Lin Feiyun patted Zhang Chuanshan's shoulder, a cruel smile on his face. "All right, since this test paper is excellent, you can put it under my name. Otherwise, it would be a pity to abandon it." "Ha!" Lin Feiyun laughed and left, leaving Grand Secretary Zhang Chunshan sighing. He secretly blamed the student called Li Yuyun for offending Lin Feiyun of all people. "Li Yuyun, for my own career, I can only destroy you. In your next life, don't offend people you shouldn't offend." Zhang Chunshan murmured with a ruthless expression. If a scholar wanted to be ruthless, there was nothing a martial artist could do. Zhang Chunshan knew how deep the waters of the imperial court were. If he righteously rejected Lin Feiyun today, he might be demoted to a pauper tomorrow. Naturally, someone would do this for Lin Feiyun. Therefore, Zhang Chunshan went all the way. He already wanted to kill this student called Li Yuyun. "Sir, I'm innocent. I really didn't cheat. This thing really isn't mine." In the examination room, 2 soldiers dragged Li Yuyun out of the examination room. Li Yuyun tried hard to explain to Zhang Chunshan. Unfortunately, Zhang Chunshan wronged him. Why would he listen to his explanation? Zhang Chunshan scolded coldly. He threw the test paper in Li Yuyun's face and said, "Did I give you this answer?" This? Li Yuyun was so angry that he couldn't speak. Today was the last exam. He was writing at a fast speed and was about to finish the paper. Suddenly, the examiner in front of him slapped the test paper in front of him and loudly scolded him for cheating. Before Li Yuyun could react, the examiner ordered the soldiers to arrest him. That was why this scene happened. "How dare you, Li Yuyun? Where did you get this test paper? Why don't you tell me the truth?" Zhang Chunshan scolded angrily. However, there was a trace of guilt in his eyes. Sir, I'm innocent. I'm really innocent. Lee Yoyun's face and ears were red. It was obvious that he still hadn't figured out what was going on. He could only anxiously cry out for his innocence. What a bold madman. Take him to the imperial prison. Zhang Chunshan rebuked. Two soldiers escorted Li Yuyun out of the examination room. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.